Hello everyone, tonight we are pulling you straight out of your modern bed memory foam and all, and dropping you into a place where sleep is more of a gamble than a comfort. Imagine waking up not to a soft alarm or the smell of fresh coffee, but to the brash clang of a distant church bell that rings like it's mad at your existence. It's cold, it's damp, and something possibly alive is tickling your ankle. Congratulations, you've just opened your eyes in the year 1327. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you? Right now, I love seeing how far and wide this sleepy little world stretches. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get down to business tonight. You're lying on a bed, which is generous considering it's a sagging pile of hay straw and possibly goat hair stuffed into a burlap sack that smells like moldy soup. This is not a fluke. This is your mattress. You shift slightly and something crunchy shifts with you. Is it a twig of flea? An old crust of bread you don't want to know. The blanket is wool, scratchy, damp, and unwashed since your last Saint's feast, which was in October. It's now March. You try to stretch, but the air hits you like a slap. Cold, sharp, and slightly scented with manure. Your back cracks like old furniture. Your knees sound like two rocks having an argument. You're 24 years old, which in medieval terms means you're practically an elder. Your body already knows what arthritis is, even though the word hasn't been invented yet. The church bell clangs again. That's your alarm clock, by the way. It's operated by a teenage novice who probably hasn't bathed in months. Its message is not rise and shine, but more like get up before your lord notices you're late. Your room, no wait. Your house is a one-room wooden hut. It has no windows, just a crude door made from two uneven planks and held together by something that might have been a shoelace in a former life. Everyone in your family lives here. You, your parents, your siblings, a visiting cousin who's overstayed their welcome for 5 years, and a goat named Agnes who is considered part of the household. The goat might be the cleanest one. There's no concept of privacy. You want me time too bad. You get we time. All the time. The walls have ears and so do the chickens. One is perched on the shelf above your head, watching you with deep judgment. The floor is dirt. Not metaphorically, literally dirt. It's not a design choice, it's just dirt. Sometimes it's dry, sometimes it's wet. Today it's a mix. Your feet sink into the cold mush as you rise and something squishes between your toes. Could be last night's soup. Could be something the goat did. Could be both. The smell is hard to describe without triggering your gag reflex, but let's try. Imagine a medieval perfume made from wet wool mildew, stale turnip goat flatulence, and a lingering note of foot rot. That's your daily air. There's no Febreze. Candles are expensive and not scented unless you count tallow and hope as a scent. The ceiling is low enough to bump your head on if you stand too fast, which is exactly what you do in your first attempt to get up. Thunk. You see stars, not romantic ones. Just mild concussion stars. Your mom is already up and muttering about St. Bartholomew. Your dad is trying to relight the hearth with damp twigs. Your little brother is sneezing into his tunic, which he then uses as a napkin. A rat scurries across the floor. It might be the same one from last night. You're on a first-name basis by now. Let's talk about clothing. You don't get dressed, you just continue wearing. The same rough wool tunic stained from smoked soup sweat and time. Your undergarments are optional, likely none. You slept in what you'll wear all day. Laundry is not a concept. It's a fantasy. If you want clean clothes, you wait until your current ones dissolve. A breeze wafts in through a crack in the wall. You try to plug it with straw. The wind laughs at your attempt and comes in harder. Outside, the frost clings to the grass like gossip. You sigh. It's time to start your day, whatever that means, in a world where calendars are church property and time is measured in chores. As you step outside, your neighbor Gertrude is already yelling at someone for stepping too close to her pig. She gestures with a wooden spoon like a scepter. A rooster crows. It sounds tired. You relate. And that, my friend, is just your morning routine. You haven't even eaten, prayed, or tried to relieve yourself yet. That's coming next, and it's not going to get any better. Historically speaking, your experience lines up pretty closely with the average 14th century peasant in Europe. One-room homes, communal living, no separation between people and livestock, and a very loose relationship with hygiene were all completely normal. Even nobles lived in drafty, smoky, and parasite-ridden conditions. Hollywood lied to you. One odd fact, the average peasant might have only one wooden bowl or cup for their entire life. Lose it, and you're slurping stew out of your hands like a medieval raccoon. As for the bells that woke you up, historians still debate whether some towns used church bells strictly for religious timekeeping, or also as a de facto civic alarm system. Basically, the town's way of saying time to suffer again. Your day has just begun, and it's already too much. You shuffle toward the corner of your one-room home, clutching a wooden bucket like it's sacred. Because in this world, it kind of is. Not in a spiritual sense, but in the this is your toilet sense. It's half full and it sloshes when you move it. You don't know if it's worse when it's full or empty. Either way, you're starting your day with a personal confrontation with human waste. There is no toilet paper, no flush, no fan, no door to close, no privacy. Just you, your family, pretending not to notice, and a bucket that's seen things. You do what must be done, trying not to make eye contact with anyone, especially the goat. Agnes is judging you. Now comes the fun part. You pick up the bucket and prepare to empty it. Not into a pipe, not into a sewer system. You carry it outside with both hands, trying not to trip over a chicken, and walk it toward the street like it's your contribution to society. Because it is. You shout the warning Gardy-Loo. A charming little scream borrowed from medieval Edinburgh shouted, before people dumped chamber pots out of windows onto the street. If anyone's under your window, they've been warned. Not that it'll help. You dump it. It splashes. Your foot gets a little. That'll linger. The street isn't paved. It's just mud mixed with animal droppings, rainwater, and the collective output of your neighborhood. It smells exactly like you'd expect. The concept of a centralized sewage system won't really catch on for several more centuries. Until then, welcome to walking through yesterday's mistakes. If you live in a wealthier household, let's say you somehow climbed your way into minor nobility, congrats. Your toilet is now a garderobe, which is just a fancy word for a vertical shaft in the castle wall that dumps straight into the moat. That's right. The same moat some people fall into. The same moat your enemies try to cross, so yes, there's literally a chance your enemy might crawl up through your toilet. This has allegedly happened. Historians still debate whether this was a common military tactic or just an especially bad Tuesday. You rinse your hands with water from a wooden bowl sitting by the door. It's gray. It's cold. It's been reused since last week. There's no soap. Soap exists, but it's handmade, expensive, and smells like goat fat and ash. You settle for wiping your hands on your tunic, which also hasn't been washed. Congratulations, you're now at net zero on the cleanliness scale. You think about washing your face, but the water in the barrel outside is frozen. It takes 3 solid thwacks with a stick to break the ice. The splash back hits you in the eye. You now smell like cold and suffering, and you're still not clean. Bathing is rare. Weekly, monthly. More like seasonally. Most peasants don't bathe unless it's spring, and the rivers are warm enough not to kill you from shock. Public bathhouses exist in towns, sure, but they're notorious for being places where people bathe, gossip, gamble, and occasionally contract syphilis. So, trade-offs. Hair care. You pour water over your scalp, scrub it with ashes, and then maybe comb it with a wooden comb that's missing half its teeth. Lice are part of the deal. In fact, you've probably named a few of yours. And now let's say you're menstruating, or have a stomach illness, or are recovering from childbirth. There's no disposal system, no clean cloth supply, no disinfectant, no Advil, no privacy. You do what you can with rags, moss, wool, and prayer, and you keep working because no one cares. Bathroom visits at night are worse. There's no light. The candles are out. You either shuffle to the corner in the dark and hope the bucket is where you left it, or you go outside and trip into a ditch, or you just hold it for 12 hours. People died falling into cesspits. That's a real thing. Sometimes the toilet is just a trench dug behind the barn, or a hole in a wooden plank over a pit, or a grassy slope. The word outhouse would feel luxurious to you now. And the smell. Oh, the smell. It clings. It's in your tunic, your hair, your mouth somehow. It's in the walls. It's your aura now. You are one with it. People often carried sprigs of lavender rosemary or vinegar-soaked cloths just to hold under their noses. That's how bad things were. Perfume wasn't for luxury, it was for survival. Here's a weird historical tidbit. Some doctors believed that bad smells or miasmas caused disease, which technically is half right. They didn't know about bacteria, but they knew the air itself was cursed. The solution: carry a pomade or a ball filled with herbs on your belt near your nose. Or just avoid breathing. And remember that you're not alone. Everyone smells. The priest, the baker, the town crier, even the king. Especially the king who wears velvet over old sweat. Society has simply agreed not to notice, except for the occasional bath-loving eccentric. King Louis XIV, for instance, allegedly bathed about twice in his life. But hey, he wore perfume. Problem solved? You finish emptying your bucket. You glance down the road and see your neighbor also dumping hers. You wave. She nods. It's a moment of community. A shared experience. A badge of mutual suffering. You walk back inside. Your hands are freezing. Your sleeves are wet. And you realize something. You still haven't had breakfast. Back inside your single-room universe of damp wood and communal breathing, the scent of something cooking greets you. You're not sure if that's a good thing yet. The smell is earthy, smoky, faintly sour. You hope it's food, but with medieval kitchens, there's always a chance it's just a rat that ran too close to the hearth. Your mother ladles something into a wooden bowl. She doesn't ask if you're hungry, because of course you are. Everyone is. Always. She hands you a steaming portion of pottage, the eternal medieval dish that's less a recipe and more a concept. Today's version looks like mashed sadness, watery beige, and filled with unidentifiable chunks. A turnip, a bean, the ghost of a cabbage. No one knows. You sit on a wooden stool that wobbles like it's thinking of retiring. You have one spoon. It's wooden like everything else and carved by your grandfather, probably with his teeth. You share it with at least one sibling. You've become very skilled at not making eye contact while swapping saliva. You take a bite. It's lukewarm. It tastes like yesterday's dinner, which makes sense because it is yesterday's dinner. Also last Thursday's. Pottage never ends, it just regenerates. Like a horrible stew-based phoenix. And the bread. It's more of a challenge than a food. Thick, dark, and crusty enough to crack teeth, it contains bits of straw grit and occasionally ground bark or sawdust, cheaper fillers to stretch the flour supply. Some loaves even have bits of ground clay or iron oxide to give the illusion of being rich and hearty. Your molars tremble at the thought. There's no butter, no jam, no anything, just bread and hope. You wash it down with beer. Yes, beer for breakfast. And no, this isn't some weekend bottomless brunch indulgence. This is your hydration plan. The water from the village well is possibly blessed, but also possibly fatal. It carries everything from bacteria to rotting leaves to traces of livestock. Boiling it is impractical. Filtering it, not even a fantasy. But beer brewed weak and fast kills the germs. It's flat warm and tastes like damp bread, but it won't kill you. Probably. Even children drink it. Your little brother is sipping from a cup that looks more like a carved gourd. He burps contentedly. That's hydration 1327 style. Sometimes if your family's lucky or someone's goat just gave birth, you'll have a bit of milk. But don't count on it. Most of the dairy is turned into cheese or butter and sold off. And milk spoils fast. There's no fridge. There's no keep refrigerated. There's just drink it now or regret it later. Your meal lasts about 6 minutes. There's no lingering, no chatting, no digesting. You eat quickly, quietly, and then return the bowl to the side shelf. Washing dishes means wiping it with a crust of bread, or maybe dipping it in the community rinse bucket, which is more of a bacteria spa. Breakfast is done. You're now fueled by approximately 340 calories of starch and desperation. Let's talk a moment about nutrition. Spoiler, it's bad. Your diet is 80% carbs, 10% boiled leaves, and 10%. I really hope this isn't mold. You're chronically malnourished. Scurvy welcome. Rickets. You and half the village. Vitamin D deficiency. It's like a family heirloom. Once in a while, if there's a festival or your lord is feeling generous, you might get meat. Not often, and not the good parts. You'll get organs. Maybe some boiled feet. Maybe something gelatinous and gray that used to moo. But usually it's pottage. Always pottage. Forever pottage. Historians still debate whether this was a deliberate dietary strategy or just the result of never-ending food insecurity. Either way, it's a slow march toward digestive surrender. Sometimes your family adds a wild herb to the mix. Nettles, dandelion greens, maybe even garlic if someone made a trade. These add flavor and pretend they're healthy, but they don't fool your stomach. You'll be hungry again in an hour. Here's a weird historical footnote. Some medieval folk believed certain foods had humorous bodily elements that governed health. Too much hot, moist food. Bad for balance. Cold, dry food. Might give you melancholy, so your pottage might be more than sad, it could be medically sad. You glance at the hearth. It's smoking badly. The chimney, if you can call a hole in the roof, a chimney doesn't draw properly. Your eyes water. Your clothes trap the smoke like it's a souvenir. By noon, you'll smell like a fireplace with abandonment issues. And don't even ask about spices. Spices are for the rich, salt. Maybe if you traded eggs. Pepper. You might as well ask for a unicorn horn. Nutmeg and cinnamon are basically currency. You've never even seen them. You've only heard of the idea of flavor. You stand. Your legs crack. Your stomach growls already. Breakfast was not satisfying. It was survival. That's all any meal is here. You chew to live, not to enjoy. And yet, somehow there's a comfort to the ritual. The warmth of the hearth, the shared struggle, the soft sound of someone slurping their fourth turnip in the corner. It's miserable, yes, but it's also life. You breathe out slowly and think, okay, maybe it won't get worse. Spoiler, it absolutely will. You finish scraping the last of the pottage from your bowl and reach for your cloak. Not because it's fashionable, it's not, but because the wind outside is about to do terrible things to your bones. The sun is still low. Your breath fogs the air, and now it's time to face the world in your only outfit. That's right, you own one set of clothes. One. It's not for style, it's not for comfort, it's for function, and barely that. You slip on your rough-spun wool tunic, which is stiff from yesterday's smoke sweat and goat slobber. Then your hose, basically leg sacks tied with rope. They sag around your knees like disappointed laundry. Your cloak. It's thick, heavy, and smells like wet barn, because that's where you store it on the barn hook next to the tools. It's woven from wool that scratches your skin like sandpaper. There's no lining, no fasteners. You just clutch it closed like a cold tortilla trying to hold its fillings in place. And that's it. No socks, no underwear, no shoes unless you're lucky, or headed to church. In summer, you go barefoot. In winter, you wrap your feet in scraps of cloth and whisper a prayer to Saint No-Toes. You glance around the room. Everyone else is bundling up too. Your younger brother pulls on his too short tunic, which used to be yours, and now reveals more leg than medieval modesty strictly allows. Your father shrugs on a leather jerkin patched so many times it's held together by faith alone. Your mother has braided her hair and tied a scarf over it, both to show modesty and to keep lice from jumping ship mid-conversation. There's no closet, no chest of drawers. Your family's entire wardrobe fits in a wooden box, plus whatever's hanging on pegs near the fire. That box also holds linens, tools, thread, and possibly a half-dead squirrel the cat dragged in last night. The word fashion doesn't exist here. Clothes are function over form always. They keep you warm, barely keep the bugs off sometimes, and soak up your sweat always. You will wear this outfit for months without washing. Maybe you'll air it out near the hearth if it rains. Maybe you want to do laundry. Sure, first haul a bucket of water from the stream. Then heat it over a fire for 2 hours. Then scrub each piece on a wooden board with lye made from ash and animal fat. Then wring it out by hand. Then hang it outside where birds might poop on it. And after all that, you'll probably still smell like burnt cheese and sheep. So no, you don't do laundry, you manage your stink. You glance in the cracked piece of polished metal that serves as a mirror. Your hair is doing something wild. It's probably cleanish since you dumped water on it yesterday. But your face has that soft reddish hue of constant wind exposure and open pore living. Your cheeks sting a little from the cold. Your nose might be trying to fall off. Normal. And let's talk hygiene. You don't own a toothbrush, or toothpaste, or floss. Maybe a rag, maybe a stick, maybe nothing. Your breath. Not great. No one's is. But people are polite about it. No one talks too close. It's an unspoken social agreement. Instead, everyone smells faintly of sweat, wood smoke, onions, and regret. Your clothes help trap all that in like a wearable ecosystem. Your armpits are now a microclimate. Here's something weird. Some medieval folks believed that too much washing was dangerous. Bathing could open your pores to disease. So staying filthy, that was considered protective. It's like medieval SPF. You head outside. The wind cuts through your tunic like a knife through old bread. You wrap your cloak tighter. It doesn't help. The cold gets in anyway, traveling up your sleeves and down your spine like it paid rent. Around you, the village is waking up. Men haul sacks. Women churn butter. Kids chase pigs that escaped their pens. Everyone is wrapped in the same hues, brown, gray, earth-stained. The only bright color in town is the red scarf worn by old Helga, who claims it wards off demons. It doesn't, but she looks fierce. A horse trots by ridden by a merchant who's clearly from out of town. He's wearing actual shoes. Everyone stares. One child gasps audibly. You notice something clinging to your leg. Fleas, again. You pinch one between your nails and flick it into the dirt. It survives. It'll be back. There are no bug sprays, no lice shampoo, no magic medieval soap. People tried herbal sachets, vinegar washes, even boiling their clothes. Nothing worked. Lice were inevitable. Some people wore linen head coverings, specifically to catch and collect the little beasts. It was called doing your daily picking. Family bonding at its finest. By the way, some monks shaved their heads not for holiness, but to keep lice visible. That's right. Tonsures were anti-lice life hacks, like you saw in spirituality and sanitation, two birds with one bald spot. You sigh and adjust your belt, which is made of rope, or a strip of leather. It holds your knife, your pouch, and a small piece of cheese wrapped in cloth your lunch, if the rats didn't get it first. As you walk to your labor for the day, we'll get to that soon, you pass the smithy. He's already hammering. Sparks fly. His apron is thick and blackened. He smells like iron and fire and brute force. You envy him for his warmth briefly. Then remember his burns. Someone calls your name. You turn. It's your cousin. She's wearing the same dress she's worn for 3 years. She's patched the hem with rabbit fur. It looks functional. You wave back. Your fingers are stiff. You start walking. The cold is now inside your bones. You smell like wood smoke pottage and wet wool. Your tunic clings to your back. A flea hops onto your collarbone. And you still have 12 hours of work ahead of you. You're half a mile from home when the throbbing in your jaw starts up again. It's dull at first, a nagging pulse beneath your molar. But by the time you've passed the well and reached the edge of the pasture, it's a full-blown medieval symphony of pain. Welcome to the world of dental care, where the guiding philosophy is, if it hurts, remove it. If it doesn't, wait. You grit your teeth. Bad choice. That one molar shifts, sending a jolt of agony straight into your temple. You pause. Breathe. Think about the options. Which are A, live with it until the tooth falls out naturally? B, visit the local barber surgeon and have it yanked out with pliers, or C, chew on a clove and pretend it's medicine. You choose option C for now. You reach into your pouch and find a piece of soft cloth with a few dried cloves tucked inside. Your mother insists they help. You bite down. It tastes sharp, bitter, almost spicy. For half a moment it distracts you. Then the pain returns, layered with the taste of old socks and firewood. Let's take a moment to appreciate how horrifying dental hygiene truly is in this century. There are no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no mouthwash, no floss, not even a vague understanding of cavities or plaque. People clean their teeth with sticks, ashes, cloth, or occasionally, if they're wealthy, a chewed twig from a fragrant tree like rosemary or sage. You chew on the end of a birch stick and hope it dislodges yesterday's barley. Your teeth are yellow. Everyone's are. If they're white, something is wrong. And by the age of 20, you probably already have at least one tooth rotting. Maybe more. By 30, it's a miracle if you still have your front ones. The pain gets worse. You touch your cheek and feel a soft swelling and abscess forming. Lovely. That's how infections start. That's also how people die. From toothaches. Yes, a molar could kill you in the Middle Ages. If it swells, festers, and spreads, it can lead to a systemic infection. And antibiotics not invented. Germ theory, not even a rumor yet. If you're desperate and brave, you go see the barber surgeon. He's the guy who cuts hair bleeds, patient sets bones, and occasionally removes wayward teeth using tools that resemble rusty gardening equipment. He'll sit you on a stool, offer you a leather strap to bite down on, and then use tongs or a hooked metal pick to pull the offending tooth. There's no anesthetic, no antiseptic, just a bucket for your blood and maybe some ale afterward if you're still conscious. Historians still debate whether some barber surgeons were more skilled than others, or if it was all just a matter of luck and bone strength. Either way, the success rate was inconsistent. You pass a neighbor on the road, Old Tom, who whistles through the gap where 5 teeth used to be. He's smiling, probably because he has fewer left to hurt. You nod in solidarity. He nods back and spits into the ditch. The glob lands with a splash that confirms your suspicions. His diet has not improved. Here's something quirky in some towns. There were folk remedies for dental pain involving onions, hot bricks, or even smoking dried herbs through hollow reeds. Some people swore by wine-soaked rags. Others just muttered prayers to St. Apollonia, the patron saint of toothaches. Yes, she exists, because medieval Europe had a saint for everything. She was martyred by having her teeth pulled out, so now she's the go-to intercessor when your gums are plotting against you. You press your tongue against the sore tooth. Bad idea. It triggers a wave of hot pain that makes your ears ring. You consider asking your cousin to knock it out with a rock. She's done it for her brother once. He's been fine, mostly. Back at the village green, a small boy is crying. His mother examines his mouth, shrugs, and hands him a piece of bark to chew. You wonder what that solves. Probably nothing, but it keeps him quiet. You keep walking, jaw clenched, eye twitching slightly. Every few steps your tongue accidentally brushes against the sore spot again, and you wince. A passing dog glances at you like it understands. It probably does. You wonder briefly what it would be like to brush your teeth every day. To floss. To gargle with something minty. You don't know what mint is, but you've heard legends. Back in your hut, your grandfather used to brag about his one remaining tooth. It's a survivor, he said proudly. He lost the others to bad bread and a jealous baker depending on which version he was telling. He's gone now, probably choked on a crust. You reach the field where you'll be working and try to ignore the pain. You've got other things to worry about: rocks, mud frost, and the fact that your boots are just leather sacks tied with string. But your mouth keeps reminding you that yes, everything is terrible, especially your face. One final historical nugget for you to chew on. Figuratively, dental prosthetics existed for the very wealthy. In Italy, some nobles had false teeth made from bone or ivory. They looked terrifying, they functioned poorly, but they were a status symbol, like saying, I care about teeth even if I no longer have any. You, on the other hand, settle for clove ash and pain. You reach for another dried clove, tuck it in your cheek, and whisper a tired little prayer to St. Apollonia. She doesn't answer, but the pain slightly dulls. You reach the edge of the pasture where a crooked wooden fence sags like it's just as tired as you are. The morning fog still hugs the earth and everything smells like damp soil, moldy hay, and effort. This is your domain now, a field that never seems to grow enough tilled by generations of hunched backs and hollow stomachs. Your job today is simple: survive through labor. And the first tool you reach for is a hoe with a splintered handle and a blade that's more rust than metal. You start digging. The earth is stubborn. The frost clings. Your hands already hurt and your knees crack every time you shift. Your breath comes out in little white clouds, and each swing of the hoe sends another jolt through your spine. This, you remind yourself, is your normal. In the Middle Ages, work is not optional. You work if you're sick. You work if you're injured. You work while grieving, starving, even bleeding. Why? Because no one else will do it for you. And if you stop, you die. It's not just your field. You also owe days of unpaid labor called corvée to your local lord. That means part of your week is spent working on his land, not yours. His wheat, his pigs, his profits. You don't get a say, you don't get paid, you just get more tired. Feudalism is simple. You get to live on the land, and in exchange you owe your body to someone else. You hear the familiar sound of hooves. A steward rides past carrying a tally stick and a scroll. He doesn't look at you, but you nod out of habit. He's keeping track of who shows up to work on the manor's fields. If your name's not there, you're fined, or worse. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve, which transfers dirt from your arm to your face like a medieval highlighter. You blink away sweat and grit. The sun finally rises above the trees, offering just enough warmth to make your clothes damp, not dry. You shift to clearing rocks from the rows, tossing them into a crude pile by the fence. Some are the size of your fist, some are the size of your regrets. One nearly crushes your foot. You don't scream, but you invent a brand new medieval swear word under your breath. Something involving geese. Your neighbor Edith appears beside you dragging a wooden rake. She's 16 but looks 40. Her hands are calloused. Her back is hunched. She hasn't smiled since last Pentecost. You nod at each other like veterans of a shared trauma. Nice weather, she mumbles. It hasn't rained, you reply, which in this world is high praise. Children scurry around the field, too. Some carry bundles of sticks. Some herd sheep. One small girl tries to chase a chicken that's bigger than her. It's unclear who's winning. Here's the medieval truth: childhood barely exists. By age 5, you're expected to contribute. By age 10, you're working like an adult. Play is rare. Toys are homemade if they exist at all. Dolls made of scraps. Balls made of pig bladders. Games that require imagination and a high tolerance for injury. And adults? They just keep working, plowing, sowing, harvesting, stacking, hauling. Over and over, season after season. Every movement matters. Every mistake could mean no food this winter. You pause to drink. From a shared leather flask passed among the workers. The water inside tastes like bark dirt and something vaguely fungal. It's still safer than the stream and cheaper than beer. Someone nearby sneezes. Loudly. No one says bless you. They just glare suspicious. In this era, a sneeze might mean death. Illnesses pass fast. Fevers spread like wildfire. One person's cough could wipe out a family. And no one knows why. Germs are a mystery. Illness is blamed on miasma, sin, or witchcraft. Your shoulder twinges. Old injury. Probably from last harvest. You were carrying a sack of wheat and slipped on a pile of manure. There was a crack, a scream, and now a permanent ache. No doctor helped. You just walked it off and prayed the swelling would stop. That's the other thing about medieval labor: there's no safety net. No workers' rights, no sick leave. You get injured, you keep going, or starve. Or hope your village priest can give you herbs and absolution. Lunch comes eventually. It's the same piece of cheese you wrapped this morning. Hard yellow and full of flavor, only if you imagine it used to be food. You gnaw on it like a raccoon with a grudge. You chase it with a sip of the water-flavored water. Then back to work. Let's throw in today's historical event, the Great Famine of 1315. It rained for 2 years straight. Crops rotted in the fields. Grain prices soared. People ate cats, dogs bark. Some stories mention worse. Entire villages disappeared. It was one of the deadliest famines in Europe before the Black Death. And here you are hoping it doesn't happen again. Because in this world, every harvest is a matter of life and death. There's no grocery store backup plan. There's just dirt, sweat, and prayer. You return to your hoe. Dig. Clear. Dig. Your hands are raw, your feet are soaked. Your back is plotting its revenge. By mid-afternoon, the fog is gone and the sun beats down. You sweat through your tunic. Your belt loosens from the weight of your pouch, and your knife clinks against your hip. Someone starts singing a work chant nearby, low, rhythmic, slightly off-key. It helps. A little. The pain in your hands fades into numbness. You're past exhaustion now. You're operating on muscle memory and bitter resolve. This is your life. This is what you do. Day in, day out. Until the harvest, until winter, until your back finally gives out or your heart just says no. And then the bell rings again. Evening prayers are coming. And your stomach just remembered it hasn't forgiven you for breakfast. You hear the bell tolling in the distance, soft and sluggish, like even the bell is tired of medieval life. You lean on your hoe shoulders, aching your breath, steaming in the fading light. That dull burn behind your eyes says you've worked enough for 3 people today, but that's normal. It's always normal. Time to walk back home, not clock out. There's no time card, no paycheck. Just the knowledge that you get to come back and do it again tomorrow. The village path is muddy and uneven. Your ankles wobble with each step, and your tunic is stiff with dried sweat and clinging straw. You pass the same crooked fence, the same weary sheep, and wave again to old Tom, who is still chewing on that same root like it owes him money. By the time you reach your door, the sun is just a smear of orange on the horizon. The air is cooler now, crisp, damp, and filled with the scent of wood smoke, dung, and onions. Inside, your family is gathered around the hearth, their shadows flickering on the walls like tired ghosts. You sit, or rather you collapse, onto the same uneven stool. Your bones protest. Your back mutters obscenities in Latin. You inhale deeply and smell weight. Is that meat? Your mother ladles something into a bowl. It's still mostly pottage, of course, but there's something floating in it that looks suspiciously like rabbit. Or is it pigeon? Either way, tonight's dinner is a luxury. Someone caught something. Maybe it was traded. Maybe it was stolen. No one asks. Everyone just eats. You raise your spoon. The broth is salty. Your tongue tingles. It's warm and it hits your stomach like a miracle. You eat slowly, letting the flavor linger. There's even a sliver of leek. Tonight is practically a feast. Your brother sneezes. Your sister throws a pebble at him. You glance around and realize something. This is the happiest part of your day. A warm fire, a half-decent meal, the dull buzz of tired bodies trying not to fall asleep in their food. It's not much, but it's something. After dinner, the bowls are wiped down and stacked. The hearth dims. The chickens rustle in their coop. And the conversation slows to a soft, murmured rhythm. This is evening in the Middle Ages. Quiet, heavy, a little grim. And this is when the rituals begin. First prayers. You all kneel on the dirt floor, heads bowed. You mumble the paternoster, your knees digging into cold ground hands clasped against your ribs. You don't know Latin well, but you know it enough to repeat by sound. You ask for health, for good crops, for safety from wolves, for St. Apollonia to finally fix your tooth. Next, your father takes out the book. There is only one. It's handwritten. It's not even yours, it belongs to the local priest, but he lets you borrow it once a week. The pages are stiff vellum. The ink is brown and smudged. The text is a mix of prayers, moral tales, and a list of saints. He reads slowly, stumbling over syllables. You listen not for the story, but for the rhythm. It's comforting, like a lullaby for the soul. In this world of hardship and hunger, stories are everything. They're the only escape you get. Here's your historical event of the evening, the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. A real uprising in England where thousands of commoners tired of unfair taxes and feudal exploitation rose up against the nobility. They marched to London, burned manors, and shouted slogans like, "When Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman." It was messy, violent, briefly effective, then crushed. You admire their courage, but also wonder where they found the energy. While the fire crackles, someone brings out a game board, a crude version of Nine Men's Morris, scratched into the table with a knife. You and your brother take turns moving stones while your sister yawns and pokes the fire with a stick. You're not good at it, but you play anyway. Anything to delay going back to the dark. Outside, the night settles in. With no street lamps, the village disappears into blackness. Noises grow louder, frogs wind distant owls. You hear the clatter of a cart passing and the bark of a dog chasing it. And now, it's time for the final challenge of the day. Sleep. You blow out the candle if you had one. More likely, the fire just dies down naturally and the room is plunged into shadows. You lie down on your shared bed, the same mound of straw and sackcloth you woke up in. It hasn't gotten softer. The fleas haven't left. The goat is snoring again. Everyone piles in. There are no bedrooms, no privacy, just corners. Everyone sleeps together layered like winter laundry. You feel a knee in your back. Someone's elbow touches your face. The baby coughs. Then someone farts. It's not clear who. You all pretend not to notice. There's no such thing as good sleep here. There are no pillows, just folded tunics. The straw pokes your skin. You scratch a bite on your ankle. You wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders and try to ignore the smell of cheese sweat and barnyard dreams. Here's an odd fact. In the Middle Ages, people often slept in two phases. They had a first sleep after sundown, woke up around midnight to pray, talk, or even visit neighbors, and then returned to bed for a second sleep. Historians still debate whether this pattern was biological, cultural, or just what happens when candles cost a fortune. You close your eyes. The pain in your jaw pulses softly, your fingers are raw, your feet are numb. But for a moment you feel warm, full, safe. And that's something. You think of the sunrise, of tomorrow's labor, of pottage. And then you hear a whisper from your sister. Did you hear about the woman who saw a wolf in the graveyard last night? Or you groan. Even in the dark, there's no escape from medieval small talk. You drift off. Sort of. The straw mattress shifts every time someone moves, and your little brother has a mysterious talent for kicking people squarely in the spine during REM sleep. But you manage its sleep, that is. For a while, until you're suddenly awake. Your eyes open to darkness. Not just dark, medieval dark. No glowing clocks, no street lamps, no phone screens. Just black. Your ears stretch out searching for sound. You hear breathing. The soft scuffle of mice in the thatch above you. A distant dog bark. Wind, maybe, or something pretending to be wind. You don't know what time it is. Clocks are for churches and noblemen. In here, you tell time by gut instinct and rooster gossip. But you know it's that in-between hour, the space between first sleep and second sleep. And now you need to pee. Of course you do. You try not to move. Maybe it'll pass. Maybe your bladder will understand that the bucket is across the room, the floor is cold, and the chamber pot is iffy. But no, it insists. You slowly slide off the straw pile. Avoid the creaky plank near the hearth. Avoid your sister's feet. Avoid stepping on the cat. You fail. The cat hisses. You fumble in the dark toward the corner. The bucket is there. Sort of. It's already half full. You make it work. Back in bed, the straw is now colder. And somehow itchier. Your feet search for warmth that has already moved on to someone else's side of the pile. You try to recapture sleep. You fail. So you lie awake like most people do during this time. This isn't insomnia, it's segmented sleep, a normal part of pre-industrial life. People woke up for an hour or two in the middle of the night and used that time to think, pray, or talk quietly in the dark. Some even made midnight visits to neighbors. There's a kind of slow rhythm to it. A patience we've forgotten. You roll over. Your mother is whispering prayers. Your father snores, then coughs, then snores again. You think about your chores tomorrow. You think about St. Apollonia and your molar. You wonder if the pottage will have beans in it tomorrow, or just disappointment. But then you hear something else. Voices outside. Low, male, urgent. You sit up. Your sister stirs but doesn't wake. The voices get louder. You creep to the door and crack it open. Moonlight spills across the yard, and at the edge of the path, 3 men are huddled near the old well whispering. You recognize one of them. He's the Reeves' cousin. He's holding something, a sack, a bundle. Then they move, fast, into the woods. You close the door slowly, lock it, or well wedge it. There's no real lock, just a bar that slides into place like a suggestion. You back away from the threshold. Sometimes people disappear in the night. Travel is dangerous after dark. There are no lights, no patrols, no safety. There are bandits, wolves, spirits, according to Edith. And then there are people like those men. You don't know what they were doing. You don't ask. You don't want to know. Crime in your village isn't common, but it exists. There are no police, just the Lord's men and the occasional traveling justice. If someone steals, they might be put in the stocks. If someone kills, there's a trial of sorts. Sometimes fair, sometimes not. Justice here is a mix of local gossip and divine guesswork. You crawl back into bed. Your heart is thudding. You clutch your cloak tight around your shoulders. The straw doesn't feel safe anymore. The dark feels thicker. To distract yourself, you remember a story old Helga once told. About a woman who caught her husband cheating and hexed his cow to produce sour milk. Magic is taken very seriously here. People believe in charms and potions and curses. There are local cunning folk who sell remedies, love powders, and minor hexes. If something bad happens, a crop fails, a baby sickens, people don't blame coincidence. They blame witchcraft. And if enough people agree, someone burns. You think of your neighbor Anselma, the quiet girl with the limp. She collects herbs, talks to birds. People whisper about her. She's kind, but that won't save her. In this world, being different is dangerous. You shiver and pull the blanket over your head. You remember a story your father told about the dance of the dead. During the plague, some people swore they saw skeletons dancing at the edge of the forest, calling names. If you heard your name, you died. You weren't sure if he was joking. You're still not sure. And speaking of the Black Death, it's still lurking in the memories of this place. People remember the stories. Whole families gone overnight. Priests, too, afraid to bury the dead. Bodies piled like broken furniture. It's been years, but the fear is still in the walls. You don't cough. Not if you can help it. Coughing makes people nervous. A sudden gust of wind rattles the shutters. You jump. Then you hear the rooster. One lonely crow in the distance. Not dawn, but close. You settle back into the straw and let your eyes drift shut again. This is second sleep. This is the forgotten rhythm of the world. Outside, the moon is sinking. The air is still, and you finally let go of the day, just in time to wake up again. The rooster crows again, louder this time, closer to your window and with a personal grudge. You wake up groggy, itchy, and unsure if you slept 2 hours or 10. That's how it always feels in the Middle Ages, like sleep is something that happens to you, not for you. The room is dim, full of muffled stirring. Your sister mumbles something into the straw. Your father's already up, tightening his belt and muttering a prayer as he pokes at the hearth, trying to rouse last night's embers. The cat has claimed your spot the moment you moved. Its eyes glow in the dark like it's judging your entire existence. You roll out of the bedding heap and immediately regret it. Your knees pop. Your back aches. There's something crusty in your hair that may or may not be dried goat spit. And oh yes, the flea bites are back. You scratch one on your shin and stare at it like you just declared war. No time to waste. You've got work to do. Again. But today's job isn't the fields, it's your turn at the public oven. Once a week, your family gets a window of time to bring dough to the communal oven, along with a dozen other families. Everyone crowds into a smoky hut where the air is so thick with heat, flour, and resentment that you could slice it with a bread knife. If you had one. The dough is ready. It's sour-smelling and heavy, a mixture of rye flour and despair. You carried it here in a wooden bowl wrapped in a damp cloth to keep it from crusting over. The yeast came from the air or last week's leftovers. It's not precise. It's survival. The oven master, a grim woman named Marta, nods at you. She's already soaked with sweat. Her hair is singed from years of sticking her arms near open flames. She marks your loaf with a symbol scratched into the top. That way you can claim it later. If it doesn't burn, you slide the dough into the oven on a long wooden paddle. The heat blasts your face like a dragon with bad intentions. You step back quickly, blinking soot from your eyes. Now, you wait. And you talk. Around you, the other women gossip. It's not idle chatter, it's information exchange. Who's sick? Who's getting married? Who's lost another sheep? Who's rumored to be cursed? You keep your head down, but your ears open. They mention the men you saw last night. Whispers of something missing from the mill. Maybe grain, maybe silver, maybe someone. No one says it directly, but the mood shifts. Someone crosses herself. Someone else spits on the floor. Here's the thing, villages are tiny, but secrets are huge, and reputations stick. If you're labeled a thief, a liar, a leper, it follows you forever. People remember, people talk. And justice here doesn't always wait for facts. Someone sneezes, everyone freezes. You do a mental roll call of who's healthy and who isn't. You make a note to pray harder tonight. The smell of baking bread fills the room. It's warm, sweet, and slightly burnt. Marta pulls the loaves one by one. She yells your name. You step forward and retrieve yours. It's ugly, dense, misshapen, but it's bread and it's yours. You hold it like a newborn and walk back through the mud past the church, past the well, past the chickens pecking each other over a worm like it's gold. Back home, your mother slices the loaf. Each piece is measured, counted, treasured. This bread has to last until next week. Every crumb matters. As you chew, you think, why does this taste metallic? You glance down. Ah, grit. Your bread contains literal stone, because the millstone's used to grind the flour chip over time. The grit ends up in the meal. That grit grinds your teeth down bite by bite until chewing feels like an act of penance. And now time to prepare for church. You wipe your hands, rinse your face with cold water from a wooden bowl, and adjust your tunic. Sunday Mass isn't optional. It's the only public event of the week besides hangings. Everyone shows up. Even if you're dying, someone props you up and pushes you into the pews like a sad puppet. The church is small, cold. It smells like beeswax, old wood, damp cloaks, and something ancient. The floor is packed earth. The walls are bare stone. A single stained glass window lets in filtered light that makes everything look holier than it is. The priest begins in Latin. You understand maybe 5 words. One of them is Amen. You cling to that one. His voice drones on, half sermon, half warning. He preaches about sin, obedience, punishment, and eternal damnation. You nod solemnly even though your mind is drifting, mostly to your tooth. Then the incense comes out. You inhale deeply. It's the best thing you've smelled all week. Midway through the service, your stomach growls loudly. Your neighbor hears it. She doesn't look amused. After communion, just a dry wafer and a few drops of wine you're not allowed to touch. You kneel, stand, kneel again. The ritual is comforting in its predictability and terrifying in its certainty. God is everywhere, and He's watching. Historians still debate whether this fear-based faith unified communities or just made them more paranoid. Probably both. After Mass, people linger, they barter, share gossip, offer condolences. You stand in line to receive a blessing. The priest places a hand on your head. You don't feel holier, just slightly greasier. Back home, your sister is spinning wool by the fire. Your father sharpens a knife with a stone. You tuck the bread away in a linen wrap and sigh. Tomorrow is Monday, which means another 6 days of toil, hunger, and gritty bread. But tonight there's a sliver of peace. You survived another day, even if your gums hate you for it. Monday returns like it always does, without mercy, without coffee, and without the faintest regard for your mood. The rooster doesn't even bother to crow this time. He just stares through the window, judging you with the quiet intensity of a creature that's never had to harvest turnips for 15 hours straight. Your joints ache before you even stand. Your back has started making a new popping noise like it's learning a language made entirely of creaks. You stretch, yawn, and shuffle toward the door where your cloak hangs stiff and slightly moldy. The dew outside greets you with its usual gift-frozen toes. But today your job isn't in the field or the oven. Today you've been summoned to assist with one of the least glamorous, most unpleasant, yet utterly essential parts of medieval life sanitation. Yes, today you are helping clear out the waste pit. Don't flinch. You asked to time travel. This is what you signed up for. Behind the house, past the woodpile and the goat pen, sits a shallow trench lined with boards and a smell that punches your soul. This is where all manner of bodily sins have collected for the last month. Not just yours, your whole family's. Also the dogs. Also whatever decided to die nearby. You wrap a cloth over your nose, but it doesn't help. The scent still seeps into your skin, your hair, your future dreams. It smells like fermented sin and old onions. Your job is to ladle out the mess into buckets and cart it to the edge of the village where it will be disposed of, which is a polite way of saying tossed onto the dung heap behind the tanner's shed and left to nature. You try not to gag as you work. You hum a little tune. Maybe something Edith taught you. It helps barely. Let's talk honestly for a moment. Medieval sanitation is not sanitation as you know it. There is no plumbing, no toilets, no sewage treatment. Waste disposal is primitive, patchy, and highly regional. Some towns have open gutters, some have cesspits. Some have nothing but bushes and forgiveness. Human waste was collected in chamber pots and dumped either into pit streams or directly onto the street. In cities, laws were sometimes passed to prohibit people from flinging it out of upper windows, but enforcement was, shall we say, inconsistent. There's a reason Gardez l'eau became a popular warning in medieval France. It means watch out for the water, which, ironically, was not water. You finish your third bucket and your stomach threatens to quit the job. You pause to breathe bad idea and look up at the sky, which is stunningly blue and completely indifferent to your suffering. Your cousin passes by and gives you a sympathetic look. She's holding a bundle of dirty linens. Laundry day, she says. You trade nods of mutual despair. Let's take a moment to address another grim reality: water quality. Clean water is rare. Streams are often contaminated by both animal and human runoff. Wells can go foul if not properly covered. Rainwater, when collected, is safer, but storage is tricky and barrels attract mosquitoes. As a result, many people drink small beer, a weak, low-alcohol ale brewed specifically for daily hydration. It's safer than raw water and just enough to keep you from dying of thirst or screaming at your neighbor's pig. Speaking of pigs, one escapes while you're mid-haul and barrels through the midden heap like it owns the place. You're too tired to chase it. You just wave vaguely and whisper, "Good luck, you beautiful trash machine." By midday, the pit is empty, which in medieval terms means less full. You scrub your hands with ashes and vinegar. It stings. It doesn't help. You still smell like a footnote in a medical journal. Your reward a turn at the public bathhouse if you're lucky. Not every village has one, but yours does. A single wooden building with a low roof, a smoke vent, and 2 giant barrels, one for hot water, one for tepid. Men bathe first, then women. Modesty is optional, but gossip is not. The bathhouse is where you find out who's getting married, who's having an affair, and whose cheese caused diarrhea. You pay with a few coins or trade a hen's egg. You step in and let the warm water soak into your joints. It's not clean. You're definitely bathing in your neighbor's skin flakes, but it's hot, and it doesn't smell like manure. And for the first time in days, you feel almost human. This brings us to a fun medieval contradiction they liked: bathing more than you'd think. Despite the cliche of filthy peasants' bathhouses were relatively common, especially in urban centers. In fact, before the plague, many people bathed once a week or more. Herbal infusions were added to the water. Oils were rubbed into the skin. It was social. It was routine. But then came disease, and suddenly public bathing was linked to infection. That fear, coupled with moral panic and church disapproval, caused the custom to decline over time. You dry off with a linen scrap. You feel lighter, cleaner. Still itchy, but now it's at least a dignified kind of itch. The sun begins to set. You trudge home where the fire has already been lit, and dinner, such as it is being stirred. Pottage again, but this time with a hint of dried apple. It feels like dessert. As you eat, you try not to think about your earlier work, about the stink still clinging to your fingernails, about the absolute horror of what's growing behind the tanner's shed. Instead, you focus on the good, warm food, quiet conversation, a little heat on your toes. You'll survive the week, just maybe not with your sense of smell. You're curled up beside the hearth again this time, with a fresh layer of bathhouse dignity and half a bowl of lukewarm pottage in your stomach. The fire crackles softly. Your sister is braiding twine, your cousin is picking lice from her hair, and the goat is eyeing the bread like it's plotting its next crime. The day is over, but the anxieties of medieval life never really clock out, especially when you live in a thatched hut and you hear the distant howling of wolves. You glance toward the door. It's shut, barred, reinforced with a broom handle, a rock, and pure hope. You're not sure that'll stop a determined animal, or a determined person for that matter, because tonight isn't just cold, it's uneasy. There have been rumors lately. Whispers of strangers moving near the forest. A distant village that stopped sending messengers. Some say it's plague again. Others say it's bandits. A few think it's the devil himself wandering by moonlight and taking souls with cold hands and red eyes. You'd laugh if it weren't so quiet. See, fear in the Middle Ages isn't just a feeling, it's a framework. You're surrounded by danger, from the forest, from hunger, from within your own skin. And no one really knows what causes it, so people make explanations. You hear a knock on the door. 3 knocks, firm, measured. Everyone freezes. No one moves. Then a voice hits Father Dunstan. Your mother moves first, throwing off the bar and opening the door just a crack. The priest steps in wrapped in a heavy cloak, his hood dripping from the fog. He carries a satchel, a small wooden cross, and a look that suggests someone has died. You stand up. So does everyone else. Is it? Your mother starts. Marjorie, he says. From the next village. She passed in her sleep. We'll say a mass tomorrow. Tell the others. Marjorie was only 34. You sit back down slowly as if death itself has brushed your shoulder. Father Dunstan nods once, offers a blessing, and leaves again. This is your reminder that death is a constant companion in medieval life. It's not poetic. It's not meaningful. It's just common. Accidents, infections, births gone wrong, a fever that didn't break, a wound that didn't close, an unlucky winter. You remember when your uncle died. It wasn't dramatic. He simply went out to the woods, didn't come back, and when they found him 3 days later, the wolves had already said their goodbyes. There are no morgues, no embalming. The body will be laid out at home, then buried by sunset tomorrow, wrapped in a shroud and lowered into the cold ground. The parish priest will say a few words. A few people will cry. Then everyone will go back to their chores. Even mourning has limits when food needs planting and the goats need milking. Historians still debate whether medieval people were more accepting of death or simply desensitized. Maybe both. When half your siblings don't survive infancy, you learn not to name the piglets too early. You lie down beside your sister again. She's quiet. So are you. The wind whistles through a crack in the shutters like it's carrying a message from 1,000 years away. You think about what comes after death. Heaven, you hope. Maybe purgatory, maybe some version of peace that doesn't involve pottage or toothaches. You whisper a prayer to Saint Sebastian. He's good for plague, just in case. Let's talk about medieval funerals, shall we? They're simple affairs. The church handles the rites, and if you can afford it, you pay for extra prayers or candles to be lit. Those with coin can request chantry priests to sing masses on their behalf for years to come. You're hoping for a clean shroud and a dry grave. Some people believe in ghost souls that haven't moved on. If someone dies with unfinished business or under mysterious circumstances, their spirit might linger. So, families leave out bread and salt, just in case. As your eyes grow heavy, you wonder what kind of ghost you'd be. Hopefully not the wailing kind. Maybe one that moves objects slightly out of place to annoy nosy neighbors. Your mother murmurs a prayer aloud. Everyone joins in, a soft, unified hum in the dark. And then something unexpected. Laughter. Your little brother, half asleep, rolls over and mumbles, "I saw Marjorie steal cheese from the church once." The room cracks into light giggles. Your mother swats him gently. "Don't speak ill of the dead. She gave it to the pig, he insists." Now your father's chuckling too. Well, that explains that pig's spiritual awakening. The grief softens, a little, enough to let the warmth back in. This is how medieval people survive loss. Not by ignoring it, but by folding it into their stories. By remembering the humor even in darkness. By sharing a warm laugh that flickers like firelight against the chill of mortality. You stare at the ceiling, your molar throbs, your spine protests. But in this moment, wrapped in straw and surrounded by soft breathing and the faint smell of smoked meat, you feel strangely okay. You're alive. And in this century, that's saying something. The next morning arrives with an eerie calm. No rooster call, no barking dog. Just silence, thick and gray, hanging in the air like a fog you can feel in your chest. You sit up slowly, the straw mattress clinging to you like an old grudge. Today is a burial day. Your family rises in near silence. Everyone knows what's expected. The village isn't large, maybe 40 families total, and when someone dies, it's everyone's responsibility. There's no funeral director, no printed programs, no speeches, just dirt cloth and a deep belief that what you do for the dead matters in the afterlife. You help your father and brother gather what's needed. The shovel, the cart, a candle, a piece of cloth. The body has already been prepared, washed, dressed, and wrapped in a plain white shroud. There's no coffin, just the body tied gently at the feet and chin, so it doesn't shift and laid on a plank of wood. You walk in procession, slowly, heads bowed. The priest leads muttering psalms under his breath. The village follows. No one wails. No one cries loudly. Grief is private here, worn like an old wool coat that never quite dries. You pass familiar fields. The well. The place where the tanner's dog got into a fight with a goose last week. The goose won. Everything looks the same, but today it feels heavier. At the churchyard, the grave is already dug. It's shallow by modern standards. The earth is hard clumped with stones and roots that never wanted to be disturbed. You lower the body carefully using ropes and prayer. Dirt falls in heavy thuds. You don't look away, but you wish you could. When it's done, the priest sprinkles holy water and marks the grave with a wooden cross. And it will last a few years, maybe. Rain and time will do their work. Afterward, there's no wake. No casserole table. Just a slow return to normal. People go back to their chores. The wheel keeps turning. Grief is a luxury for the idle, and no one here is idle. Back home, your sister is already mending a tunic. Your cousin is peeling root vegetables. You sit near the fire, dazed, and listen to the wood crackle. You wonder what it would be like to be remembered 100 years from now. A name scratched into a church ledger, a fading carving on a stone, or nothing at all. But not all moments of medieval life are so grim. Because today, after the funeral, after the firewood is stacked, and the chickens fed something rare and magical happens, your neighbor bursts through the door with a letter, an actual letter, from a cousin in the next shire, delivered by a traveling friar, written on real parchment with real ink, sealed with a blob of wax bearing a tiny pressed rose. You all gather like it's a festival. Your father carefully slices open the seal and begins to read aloud. It's a simple message news of a baby born an ox gone lame, a rumor about taxes changing next spring. But you listen like it's the most important thing in the world. Because it kind of is. This is how knowledge travels slowly, shakily, and with about as much reliability as a drunk goat. Most people can't read, and even those who can like the priest don't always have access to current information. So letters like this are treasure, and if you can't read, you memorize what's said. You pass it along. You become a vessel for memory. This is oral culture. Stories passed from mouth to mouth like water in a drought. Every village has a teller. Someone who remembers the old tales, the saints, the battles, the monsters, the moral warnings, thinly disguised as bedtime stories. Tonight after supper, it's your father's turn to tell one. He sits by the fire and launches into a tale about a knight who made a deal with a forest spirit in exchange for a talking sword. There's betrayal, a cursed boar, a magical fern, and a twist ending where the knight turns into a tree. You've heard it 100 times. You know the ending. But still you listen. Because stories aren't just entertainment here. They're survival guides, emotional maps. They teach you how to live, how to love, how to grieve, how to keep going when your knees hurt, and your bread is mostly stone dust. Here's your canonical history for today. The 12th century rise of courtly love. Yes, even in a world of mud and manure, people obsessed over romance. Troubadours in southern France began writing poems and songs about unrequited love, noble suffering, and chaste desire. It wasn't about real relationships, it was about longing, drama, devotion. You glance at your sister who's secretly smiling at the memory of a blacksmith's apprentice. You know something's going on there, but you're not saying anything yet. Meanwhile, your cousin is humming. A tune from church, but slower, softer. You recognize it. It's the kind of melody that stays in your chest long after it leaves your ears. As you settle in for the night, the fire glows low and orange. The room feels smaller, warmer, safe. And you realize something. Despite the hardship, despite the danger, despite the lack of toothpaste or indoor plumbing or privacy or personal space, there's something comforting here. Life is shared. Suffering is communal. Joy is rare, but when it comes, it's multiplied. You close your eyes. And this time, sleep comes quickly. Because tonight, you're not mourning the world you lost. You're surviving the world you're in. You wake before the rooster. It's still dark early enough that the stars haven't packed up yet. The air inside the cottage is damp, and your breath clouds in front of your face. You burrow deeper into the straw, delaying the inevitable. But you know what day it is? Market day. In a world where every day feels the same, wake, work, ache, sleep, market day is different. It's not just about buying and selling, it's about connection. About seeing new faces, overhearing new gossip, and maybe getting your hands on something not made out of barley wool or regret. You dress quickly in your second best tunic, which means the one with only 2 patches grab the basket and help your father load the cart. You've got a dozen duck eggs, 2 carved wooden spoons, and a wheel of dubious smelling cheese. Not bad. Not great. But enough. The road to town is muddy and winding. You pass fields still coated with dew, a stone cross tilted at a holy angle, and a small shrine tucked beneath an oak, its candle flickering despite the breeze. You reach the market just as the sun begins to rise, and suddenly it's like stepping into another world. Color, noise, smell, chaos. The square is already full of tents wagons, livestock, and humans doing an impressive amount of shouting. There's a man selling salted fish, a woman with baskets of dried lavender, a boy juggling poorly, and at least 2 people haggling over what is definitely a stolen goat. The smells hit you first: fried onions, mud, perfume, manure, sweat, and roasted meat. You feel dizzy with delight and disgust in equal measure. You find your family's usual spot and set up. Your mother starts arranging eggs like they're fine porcelain. You help your father display the spoons and try to brush the suspicious spot off the cheese. It doesn't help. As customers start wandering by, you marvel at the variety of people. Merchants with coins, monks with scrolls, nobles with noses so high they're basically weather vanes. a juggler in bells, and a woman selling magic stones that are clearly just river pebbles with ambition. You manage to trade 2 spoons for a small jar of honey liquid gold. You cradle it like it might vanish. While your parents haggle, you're sent to walk the market and look for salt. Instead, you find everything else. A man offers you a love potion, probably urine and rosemary. Another offers to read your palm, then tells you you'll die by cheese. You believe him a little. A girl near the fountain tries to sell you a ferret. You consider it. Then you spot something that stops you cold. A stall small, almost hidden selling books. Actual books, hand-copied, ink on parchment, bound with thread and prayer. You step closer. The seller is a balding man with ink-stained fingers and a tired smile. Looking for a miracle, he asks. You say nothing. You just stare. Most peasants never own a book. Many can't read. But your village priest taught you a little. Enough to sound out prayers. Enough to imagine stories. You glance at the price tag on a tiny book of saints' lives. It costs more than your goat. Still, you ask to hold it. The parchment is soft and thick. The letters look like art. The margin is filled with small drawings. Angels, monsters, flowers, and what looks like a snail fighting a knight. You laugh. The man looks at you with surprise. First time seeing marginalia, he asks. They're the monk's way of staying sane. Copying psalms gets dull. You nod eyes wide. Here's your canonical history moment, monastic scriptoria, where books were hand-copied by candlelight for centuries. Some monks added tiny, strange illustrations in the margins called marginalia. Snail knights, rabbit assassins, priests wrestling devils. Historians still debate whether these were inside jokes, acts of quiet rebellion, or just signs of a deeply bored monk. You don't buy the book, but you remember it. Forever. Later back at the stall, your mother has traded half the cheese for a bolt of rough cloth. Your father is bartering for a sack of dried beans. Everyone looks sunburned, wind-chapped, and a little happier. Before you leave, you catch sight of a traveling troupe setting up near the square. A small platform, a painted backdrop, and 3 actors with more energy than sense. You stay and watch. The play is chaotic. A knight who loves a shepherdess, a king who's actually a goose, a nun who juggles apples while shouting about sin. You laugh until your ribs hurt. And here's the best part. You understand every word. Unlike Latin Mass, this is your language, your slang, your jokes. This is entertainment for people like you. It's slapstick, silly, maybe even a little rude. But it's alive. And for a few minutes you forget the fleas, the aching feet, the loss of Marjorie, the burning question of whether your bread will break your molar. You just laugh. When the cart heads home, the sky is pink. The wheels rattle. The honey sits on your lap like a secret, and you realize this day was good. The Middle Ages might be brutal, dirty, short, but even here, there is wonder. You look back once at the market still echoing with song and shouts and ferret salesmen, and then you disappear into the trees, the scent of roasted onion still clinging to your sleeve. You return from market day feeling like royalty, dusty, tired, and sore, royalty, but royalty nonetheless. The honey is tucked safely into a clay pot wrapped in linen. The cloth your mother traded for is already being measured by your sister. And your father swears the beans he got are the best in 3 counties. You collapse onto your usual spot by the fire, thinking maybe you can rest a bit. But then you hear it. The bell. Not the church bell. No. This one is smaller, sharper, and far more annoying. It comes from outside swinging on a stick carried by the local town crier. He shouts as he walks, his voice trained to cut through fog chatter and thatch. Hear you, the Lord's men will collect dues. Next Tuesday, all subjects to present their accounts. And just like that, the peace evaporates. You forgot. Of course you forgot. Taxes, again. Your family, like every peasant household, owes dues to the local lord. Part of your harvest. Part of your animals. Occasionally, part of your sanity. It's called feudal obligation, and it's the invisible yoke around every villager's neck. Your father mutters under his breath, counting out what's left of the barley. You're pretty sure he just subtracted your shoes from the family budget. Let's talk about money, or the lack of it. Most medieval peasants didn't use coin for daily life. Barter was the norm. Eggs for thread. Milk for mending. Labor for grain. But once or twice a year, the Lord demands actual currency. Or an equivalent in kind so many eggs, so many fowl, so many days of unpaid labor in the Lord's fields. Your father calls it rent. Your mother calls it theft dressed as tradition. And then there's the church tithe. Yes, you owe another tenth of everything you have often to a priest who hasn't harvested anything but sermons in 20 years. The irony is not lost on you. You decide to clear your head. You walk toward the fields passing the same fence you mended last month, and the same pig that broke it yesterday. The air smells of damp earth and something vaguely horse-like. You stop by the river, sit on a rock, and that's when you see them. A group of pilgrims passing through. They wear badges, small pewter tokens sewn to cloaks, each one marking a shrine they've visited. One has a cockle shell from Santiago, another a little sword for St. Paul. They carry walking sticks, wide eyes, and the kind of tired feet only holy ambition can fuel. They nod at you. One offers a dry fig, you accept. You sit together for a while, watching the water move. Pilgrimage is one of the few reasons a commoner might really travel beyond the next village. It's a sacred journey with spiritual reward. Some go to be healed, some go to be forgiven. Others go because home hurts too much and the road feels like a second chance. Historians still debate whether pilgrimage served more as genuine devotion or social pressure. But for many, it was the most profound experience of their lives. You wonder what it's like to walk that far, to see another country, to sleep under different stars. You wonder if you ever will. Back home, your cousin is sharpening the sickle. The fields will need harvesting soon. Everyone's hands will bleed before it's done. But tonight is still quiet. You sit with your family near the fire. Someone mentions the pilgrims. Your grandmother nods, eyes far away. I saw Canterbury once, she says. Walked there with a blister the size of St. Francis Patience. Everyone laughs. Then your sister says something rare. I want to leave, someday. The room pauses. Your father stiffens. Your mother looks down. But your grandmother, old, brittle, half-blind, smiles. Then go, she says. Just leave a candle for me when you do. The conversation moves on, but the air has changed. Here's your odd fact. For the day, medieval peasants weren't as stuck as people think. While most stayed local, some traveled for fairs, for work, for pilgrimage. Labor shortages after the Black Death made it easier to move, to renegotiate, to dream. And some did. Maybe your sister will be one of them. Maybe not. But tonight she looks at the stars with something new in her eyes. And that's enough. You fall asleep later with your feet still dirty and your stomach mildly content. The honey remains untouched. Your mother is saving it for something special, which means you may never see it again. You dream of books, of roads, of the snail fighting at night. And somewhere beyond the trees, the pilgrims are still walking. The days blur again. One sunrise folds into another as if time itself is churning butter slow. Steady, slightly sour. The autumn winds grow sharper. You start waking with cold fingers and going to bed with straw stuffed under your tunic for warmth. There's talk of snow already dusting the mountains 2 villages over. Winter is coming. But this isn't some dramatic moment with dragons or ominous music. No, medieval winter isn't cinematic, it's just hungry. Everything shifts now. The rhythm of survival changes. No more planting, no more long hours in the field. But that doesn't mean rest, it means preparation. The food must be stored, the animals insulated, the roof checked for leaks, every item in the house is questioned. Will it help you live through February? No. Then it's firewood. You start with the root cellar. You and your sister spend the morning shuffling dusty sacks of onions, carrots, turnips, and a few wrinkled apples that smell like old cider and hope. Some are already rotting. You toss those to the pigs who seem delighted. Upstairs, your mother's laying out strips of salted meat across racks by the fire. It smells like survival, and like your nose is now permanently lined with bacon grease. Your cousin has been tasked with guarding the cheese shelf, a sacred place where wheels of dense, nose-violating cheese age like questionable treasure. Don't touch it. Don't name it. Definitely don't ask why one of them appears to be moving. Winter isn't just about cold, it's about what runs out. Food, fuel, patience, people. The old and weak often don't make it to spring. Not because of drama, just because their bodies quit when the calories did. You've seen it before. A neighbor stops showing up to mass. Their chimney stops smoking. And then someone finds them wrapped in every blanket they owned. Already cold. You don't talk about it directly, but everyone knows. That's why as the days shorten, community tightens. People share more, laugh harder, visit often. Even that annoying neighbor with the dramatic elbows is suddenly more tolerable. One evening, Father Dunstan hosts a story circle in the churchyard, bundled in cloaks sitting around a blazing fire pit, sipping something that definitely isn't just spiced ale. You go, of course, everyone does. He tells tales of saints and sinners, of miracles and mysteries. He talks about a monk who fasted for 100 days and could talk to birds. A knight who swore an oath of silence and was eaten by wolves before he could break it. A poor farmer who gave his last turnip to a beggar and woke up the next day with a cow in his bed. No one knows if the cow was divine or just lost. Either way, it's a good story. Then your grandmother pipes up and tells a story about a girl who ran off with a wandering poet and came back with 7 goats and no shame. Everyone howls with laughter. Here's your canonical historical event for today. The Great Famine of 1315-1317. 3 years of cold, wet weather that ruined crops across Europe. Millions starved. Cannibalism was reported. Even nobility suffered. It changed how people saw God punishment and the fragility of life. Your village. It still tells stories about the years when the bread turned black. You weren't born yet, but the fear lives on, passed down like a bad family heirloom. As winter deepens, you become part of a quiet, seasonal rhythm. Morning, stoke the fire, clean the ashes, check for leaks. Midday, fix things. Mend shoes, weave rope, patch tunics, chase the goat out of the house again. Evening, eat something warm if you're lucky. Tell a story, sing a song. Pray that tomorrow won't be colder. You begin to notice the smallest joys. A dried apple slice that still tastes faintly of summer. The way firelight makes your sister's face glow as she hums that church melody. The feel of your grandmother's hand dry and knotted like bark holding yours during a storm. You even find a moment of quiet happiness when you spot a single green sprout in the cold corner of the garden. It's not edible, it's not useful, but it's there, alive. You wonder how something so soft could survive in such a world. You're starting to understand, because so are you. You dream differently now. Less about books, more about blankets. Less about escape, more about endurance. But still the dream flickers. A story of your own, maybe. One where your name is remembered. You fall asleep to the sound of snow starting outside, dogs curling near the door, and someone softly reciting the Lord's Prayer in Latin. And you know this much. You made it. Through cold, through hunger, through fleas, manure, and grief. You lived a medieval life, and somehow it's not the regret that stays with you. It's the resilience, and now the fire burns low. The snow still falls outside, soft, steady, uncaring. The sounds of the medieval world have quieted no shouting market sellers, no church bells, no goats trying to eat the corner of your blanket. Just the silence of a night that has wrapped itself around the cottage like wool. You've seen enough now, haven't you? You've been woken by frost and fleas. You've dug waste pits and buried neighbors. You've eaten bread that could chip a tooth and lived in a world where a smile costs nothing but could mean everything. You've worked through aching muscles, mourned in candlelight, and shared laughter around a pot of watery soup. You didn't come to the Middle Ages to thrive. You came to understand. And that's what makes the sleep sweeter now. Because yes, life back then was short, brutal, often terrifying. But it wasn't all darkness. It was also songs by firelight bread split with strangers, and the stubborn flickering light of people who endured the unendurable. Who didn't have antibiotics or electricity or TikTok, but still found ways to love, laugh, and carry on. So as your eyes drift close tonight, think not just of chamber pots and leeches, but of stories whispered in the dark. Of saints carved in candle wax. Of lives lived fully even when they were short. And if you're hearing this from a warm bed with clean sheets under a roof that doesn't leak, be grateful. You would not have lasted a day in the Middle Ages. But for tonight, you did. Sleep well, traveler of time. You've earned it. The first thing you notice beyond the smell of smoke and something faintly cabbage-like is the sound. It's quiet but not silent. The soft cluck of a hen roosting under a bench. The shuffling of straw. A low snore from someone possibly human, possibly not. You step over a sleeping child curled in a pile of rough wool and move toward the hearth. The fire doesn't warm the room so much as make one corner of it slightly less miserable. You hold your hands out instinctively. They stay cold. There's no separate bedroom. Beds in the modern sense are the stuff of royalty and monasteries. Here people sleep on straw-stuffed pallets, bundles of cloth or wooden planks with a thin sack of dried grass. If you're lucky, maybe there's an old animal hide thrown over it. If you're not, you make friends with the floor. And then there are the chickens. They're not pets. They're not exactly tools. They're survival partners. In the harshest winter months, the boundary between livestock and family blurs like breath on a window. Chickens sleep inside the house because they're precious, not just for eggs, but for warmth. Their bodies give off heat, and that's not something you waste when the wind outside can freeze the water bucket solid. A hen snuggles into the crook of your knee. You let her. You may be wondering, did people really sleep with chickens? Historians still argue whether this practice was universal across all peasant households, or more typical of the poorest and most rural. But there's plenty of documentation from church complaints about livestock in dwellings to records of communal animal sheltering in winter barns. And honestly, if it's 5 degrees like and the floor is stone, a chicken suddenly becomes very welcome company. There's a practicality to it. Chickens inside means eggs in the morning and no worrying about foxes at night. But there's also a strange comfort in the arrangement. The hen breathes softly, rhythmically. You can feel the flutter of her feathers against your wool-clad legs. She's a tiny furnace with a beak. In some households, larger animals like sheep, goats, or even a cow might be kept in a partitioned-off corner of the cottage. Their body heat helped warm the air, albeit air that now smelled strongly of, well, animal. You wrap your cloak tighter. The wool is rough and slightly damp from yesterday's snowstorm, but it traps enough heat to make the cold bearable. You glance over at the others. Everyone's sleeping in a pile, limbs tangled heads, sharing the same pillow or at least the same burlap sack stuffed with straw. No one moves much. That's how you stay warm stillness and shared breath. Above you, the thatched roof lets out an occasional creak, and a few errant flakes of snow drift through a hole someone meant to patch last August. You make a mental note tomorrow maybe, or next year. Outside the wind screams again. You're still cold, but it's a manageable kind of cold, now anchored by the quiet rhythms of shared sleep. Even the baby, wrapped in what looks like 3 layers of linen and fur scraps, seems to sigh in her sleep, lost in whatever dreams babies have in the 1300s. Possibly involving milk and not having fleas. There's a strange serenity to it. No privacy, sure, no space. But also, no loneliness. Everyone is in it together, even the chickens. And just before you drift off, one last cluck sounds beside your ear, sharp and oddly comforting, like a feathery reminder that you're not alone in this long, cold night. The house you're in, if you can really call it a house, isn't designed for beauty or comfort. It's designed for survival, and just barely at that. The walls are a mixture of timber and wattle and daub, a sort of medieval plaster made from mud straw and animal dung. Sounds unpleasant, it is, but it's surprisingly effective at keeping the worst of the wind out most of the time. You can see where rain has eroded patches near the bottom, where damp has crept in like a nosy cousin and just stayed. A few sections have been patched with old rags, moss, or whatever looked vaguely wall-like at the time. The floor earth. Just earth. Packed and flattened over generations of stomping, sleeping, and spilled soup. Occasionally someone throws down fresh straw to keep things dryish or maybe sweeten the smell a little. Emphasis on the ish. The ceiling is low. Thatched reeds hang over wooden beams, and they aren't purely decorative. They drip. Not always just when the snow melts or the roof gives into gravity. You quickly learn to avoid the drip zones. That suspiciously dark corner of the room. Don't sleep there. And yet this little box of smoke and straw is alive. Not grand, not clean, but alive. You shift your weight and a soft creak sounds underfoot. One of the chickens grumbles in her sleep. She's found a warm patch near the hearth and is clearly not interested in moving, even as someone else, probably the father, coughs and rolls over in his sleep, pulling half the blanket with him. Sharing is a moral ideal, not a reliable bedtime rule. The architectural layout of a medieval peasant's home is fluid. There's no blueprint, no blue tape. Just whatever materials you had mixed with, whatever needs you couldn't ignore. Most homes like this consisted of one main room used for everything: eating, cooking, sleeping, arguing, repairing tools, having babies, curing meat, and yes, housing the animals. Some slightly better off peasants might have had a 2-room cottage where a small partition, think a flimsy wooden divider, or maybe even just a curtain separated the human space from the livestock. But let's not kid ourselves. The smell that traveled. Some houses even had a tiny loft above the main room, accessed by a ladder or stacked crates. These were usually for storing grain firewood, or if you were lucky, sleeping children who didn't roll over too much in their sleep. Because falling from the rafters into a chicken's nest is at best an embarrassing family story, and at worst a cracked rib. There's a lot of creative engineering here. Not the kind you learn in school, but the kind you figure out when your left foot has been cold for 6 hours and the thatch keeps falling on your stew. Hooks hang from beams made of bent nails or carved wood holding herbs pots or maybe a drying fish that no one has mentioned but everyone smells. The door is a marvel in itself. It doesn't latch so much as lean. There's a bar across it for nighttime more to keep out wind than people. Theft wasn't unheard of, but really, what's anyone going to steal? Your one spoon, your one chicken. Okay, the chicken maybe, but she bites. Historians still argue whether early medieval cottages had chimneys. Some did, but many didn't. Instead, the smoke just drifted upward and ideally out through a hole in the roof. Realistically, it collected in the rafters like a lazy cloud and slowly filtered down into your lungs while you slept. Hence the persistent morning cough that sounded like a choir of frogs. And yet there's a quiet genius in the layout. The fire is central because it has to be. It's where food is cooked, light is generated, and limbs are thawed. The animals sleep nearby not just for convenience, but for heat. Their bodies turn the room into a low-budget sauna minus the eucalyptus. The bed area is always furthest from the door. Makes sense you want to be as far from the wind as possible, but it also means that guests when they arrive rarely immediately see your sleeping spot. Privacy. That's for rich folks in monasteries. In this home, everyone knows when you're snoring, sweating, or having that weird dream again, where the turnips are judging you. Still, there's beauty in the logic. Nothing is wasted. Every nook has a use. The ledge above the hearth might hold salt-dried herbs or even a little saint's token. Not for vanity, for hope. You look around and realize that everyone, despite the hardship, has created something enduring. A home. Not warm, not dry, not quiet, but real. And when the wind picks up again and howls through the gaps in the wood, you press a little closer to the center, where the heat from fire family and one slightly disgruntled chicken keeps the worst of the winter out. There's something you come to appreciate slowly in a home like this. Chickens are better than blankets, not in every way. Obviously, blankets don't poop on the floor, but when you're huddled together on a night so cold the breath from your nose crystallizes on your upper lip, a plump hen, nestled against your side, starts to feel like a small miracle. You shift slightly and one of the hens makes a half-hearted squawk before tucking her head tighter under her wing. She doesn't leave. She knows she's needed. It's easy to romanticize this now in your imagination. Little feathered heaters waddling about the cottage, coexisting sweetly with humans. But the reality is that chickens, like everyone else in the medieval world, were just trying to get through the winter without dying. Bringing them indoors wasn't cute, it was practical. A laying hen was valuable, almost sacred. Eggs were protein fat, and tradable goods all rolled into one fragile shell. A good hen might lay 150 eggs a year, assuming she didn't freeze solid or get eaten by a fox. Keeping her indoors during the worst of the cold months wasn't just survival, it was strategy. Historians still debate how widespread this practice was. In wealthier or urban households, animals were typically kept in separate outbuildings or barns. But in rural, poorer homes, especially in northern Europe, records and archaeological remains suggest that it was common for smaller livestock, chickens, goats. Sometimes pigs, to share living space with humans in winter, and not just for warmth. Chickens were also early warning systems. They squawked when predators approached. They moved toward warmth. If your chickens weren't sleeping near the hearth, something was probably wrong, like a draft or a drop in temperature. They were, in a way, tiny feathered barometers. You reach out a hand and feel the soft, oddly comforting weight of one by your ankle. She's warm. Warmer than you, probably. A living coal in the night. There's a rooster in the corner too, tied to a wooden leg of the bench. He's surprisingly well behaved, probably from exhaustion or cold. You don't want him hopping up on your chest and crowing at 3 a.m., so the tie's an insurance policy. He blinks at you slowly. He knows you're all in this together. It's not just chickens. In harsher winters, goats or sheep might be brought inside too. There's something surreal about watching a goat casually chew your bootstring while you try to sleep. But again, heat is heat. And if the goat pees on the floor, well, so does the baby. You mop it up with straw and move on. But let's focus on the chickens. They're quieter, more manageable, and they give back even while they snore. Yes, chickens snore. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft, intermittent huffing sound like a deflating bellows. If you've never heard it, you might mistake it for someone sighing in their sleep. It's oddly soothing, and they dream. Or seem to. Every now and then one will twitch a foot or jerk its head like it's chasing something through the straw. What do medieval chickens dream of sunlight, maybe? Worms, or just not being cold. There's a rhythm to this shared living. The chickens shuffle in around sundown, peck at whatever crumbs were dropped during the evening meal, and settle under benches on laps or occasionally atop someone's blanket-wrapped feet. They know the drill. They've done this before, and the humans don't really talk about it. They grumble maybe if someone wakes up with feathers in their mouth. But it's just part of life. The same way you get used to the smell of smoke or the sound of mice in the walls or the strange creaking that always seems to happen right before dawn. It's all background. It's all normal. Tonight, the wind is cruel. It curls around the edges of the door and whispers cold gossip across the floor. The chickens nestle deeper into the folds of cloaks and wool. One of them has even managed to perch near the firewood pile, dangerously close to the embers, but determined to roast herself from the toes up. You look around and realize the hearth, pitiful though it is, has become the heart of everything. It glows faintly, casting red shadows across sleeping faces and ruffled feathers. The air is thick with smoke and animal breath and the faint sweetness of dried hay. It shouldn't be comforting, but it is. The chicken by your hip shuffles again and lets out a breathy, warm sigh. You let your eyes close. There's something ancient about this moment. Not just old, but primal. The warmth of another living body, the rough comfort of wool, the closeness of family, human and otherwise. All bound together in one small, smoky room, just trying to see the winter through. You're still cold, of course you are, but you're not alone. And somehow that's enough. Now let's talk about beds. Or more precisely, about the fascinating lack of them. You stretch your legs a little, careful not to disturb the chicken still tucked at your side. Her soft feathers brush against your wool stockings as she snoozes. Around you, the household is quiet, save for a soft snore, a distant cough, and the creaking groan of the wind, nudging at the beams above. The concept of a bed in a medieval peasant's home wasn't quite the romantic four-poster contraption you might see in a castle drama. For most families, sleep happened on a straw-stuffed sack, if they were lucky, or directly on the earth, softened, only by a few layers of woven cloth cloaks or dried moss. The fanciest part, maybe a rolled-up bundle of spare clothes as a pillow. This wasn't from laziness or some kind of Spartan philosophy. It was economics. Wood was expensive. Linen was laborious. Everything took time, skill, and coin. So you made do, and you layered. Tonight you're lying on a straw mattress that's been reused more times than you can count. Every now and then, something sharp pokes through the fabric, and you suspect it might not be straw anymore. Could be old reeds. Could be last year's broom. You don't ask questions. You're wrapped in a thick wool cloak that still smells faintly of smoke and sheep. Beneath that, another scratchy layer, a woven blanket passed down from a cousin, patched and redarned at least 3 times. If you shift just right, your toes can share warmth with the child curled beside you. You both pretend not to notice. There's no privacy. Everyone's in the same sleep bundle, children, parents, even that distant cousin who showed up last fall and never really left. You can feel someone's foot by your ribs. There's an elbow gently nudging your shoulder. And you're pretty sure a cat just walked across your head. This is normal. The layering technique wasn't random. It was survival. People slept in most of their clothes, a linen shirt, woolen hose, maybe even a tunic if it was especially cold. The idea was to conserve every bit of body heat, like nesting dolls made of sweat and wool. You didn't undress for bed unless you wanted a fever or a visit from the village healer, who would probably prescribe garlic in your ears. Historians still discuss whether peasants changed into nightclothes at all. The general consensus is probably not. Nightshirts were more common among the wealthy. For everyone else, sleeping naked was neither fashionable nor advisable. Imagine peeling off your only tunic in a room that hovers just above freezing and then trying to put it back on when it's stiff with frost. Not to mention getting out of bed was an extreme sport. Let's say nature calls. It's pitch dark. You don't have a lantern. The chamber pot is across the room, possibly already full, and navigating toward it means stepping over 4 people, 1 cat, 2 chickens, and a goat with anger issues. So you think very hard about how badly you really need to go. You don't have a mattress so much as a negotiation. A place to lie down becomes a shared space of limbs breath and whispered apologies when someone rolls over too far. If you're lucky, you sleep near the fire. If you're not, you get the edge of the room close to the wall where frost sometimes forms in tiny lace patterns that are very pretty and completely terrifying. A goose wanders in from somewhere. She honks once and waddles up beside your straw pile like she owns the place. She probably does. You adjust slightly to make room. And here's the part that modern sensibilities might find. Peculiar sleep didn't necessarily come all at once. There's a theory among historians that people in the Middle Ages experienced what's called segmented sleep. That is, they would go to bed shortly after nightfall sleep. For a few hours, wake up in the middle of the night for an hour or two maybe to tend the fire prey or sneak in a quiet chat and then fall back asleep until morning. Your body just adapted to the rhythm of dark, colder nights. And during that wakeful stretch, it's not uncommon to feel a bit philosophical. You lie in the dark listening to the fire pop, and the hens mutter in their dreams. You feel the straw shift beneath your back, the closeness of the people around you, and the undeniable truth that this weird, chilly pile of humanity and poultry is home. You might say a quiet prayer or recite a line of poetry you barely remember. Maybe you whisper something to the child beside you who mumbles a sleepy nonsense reply. Maybe you reach over to pull the blanket tighter around someone else's shoulders. There's no room, no space, and no silence, but there is togetherness. It's not a bed, but it's enough. You close your eyes again, tucking the edge of the wool beneath your chin, and listen as the wind howls outside. And the goose beside you sighs like a retired innkeeper. At some point in the night, you wake up eyes barely open body, still half lost to sleep, and realize something smells familiar. Not bad exactly, just strong. It's the scent of humanity boiled down to its most basic ingredients. Wool ash breath, a trace of cabbage stew clinging to someone's sleeve, and somewhere beneath it all the dry, musty scent of old straw and chicken fluff. You lie still. There's a soft rustling beside you, someone shifting under the blanket, perhaps adjusting to a cold draft sneaking in through a crack in the daub wall. Your fingers fumble around and find the edge of the coarse fabric again. You pull it up over your shoulder. Then you smell it again. It's hard to pinpoint at first. A little sour, a little smoky. Is that wet dog? No, just the corner where the cloak soaked up melted snow earlier. A faint tang of old onions, maybe. And feathers. Always feathers. This is the olfactory tapestry of a medieval winter night. A stew of scents made from survival improvisation. And the inconvenient fact that windows haven't been invented yet. Not proper glass ones, anyway. If you're lucky, there's a shutter you can pull closed against the wind. If you're very lucky, someone remembered to plug the chimney hole when the fire died down. If not, the night air has likely wandered in nosed around the embers, and now swirls lazily in the rafters like a bored cat. You exhale. The breath floats visibly in front of your face. You're still alive. And that's saying something. The thing is, bathing wasn't exactly a nightly ritual. Historians still argue about how often medieval peasants bathed. Some say only a few times a year. Others believe rural folks bathed more often using rivers and heated basins when they could. But in winter, with frozen water and no indoor plumbing, you mostly just hoped no one got too close. So the nighttime aroma inside your home is a medley of body heat and last week's linen. No perfumes. Just you, your family, and the scent of life raw and unfiltered. You shift slightly and the chicken near your hip flaps once offended. She settles again, her claws clicking softly against the packed earth. Somewhere behind you, a pot bubbles low over the fire, reheating whatever soup remains from yesterday. Its scent, root vegetables, and maybe a bone if you're fortunate, joins the air like a sleepy guest. The fire crackles faintly and the smoke is persistent. You can taste it sometimes on the back of your tongue, as if the air itself has been roasted. Your eyes water a little even though the flame is low. But here's the odd thing, you've grown used to it. Everyone has. Even the youngest child tucked beneath a shared cloak doesn't stir when a puff of smoke curls into the room. It's not a hazard, it's just part of the atmosphere. You wake up coughing sometimes, sure. You might rub your eyes until they stop burning. But you don't think, oh, we should improve the ventilation. You think, let's not let the fire die again. You hear someone shift behind you. Maybe the grandfather, maybe just a neighbor crashing for the night. He mumbles something in his sleep. It sounds vaguely like a complaint about the goat. You don't blame him, because now there's that smell again. Not strong, just present. A note of damp fur and fermented hay. The goat apparently has joined the party. She's stationed herself by the door, snuffling around for scraps of yesterday's oatcakes. Her breath hangs in the cold air like a soft fog. You wonder if she dreams, probably of warm fields and fewer humans. And then you hear it, the unmistakable splat of something wet hitting straw, followed by a gentle bah. You sigh, pulling the blanket a little tighter over your ears. The goat has once again offered a gift to the corner of the room. A fragrant one. But no one moves to clean it up. Not now. That's a morning problem. For now you're warm mostly. The stink will settle, it always does. The straw is absorbent. Mostly. It's strange what you get used to. There's a scholarly debate about whether medieval people noticed their own smells. Did they suffer through it? Or were they just immune? Some historians argue that scent held a different cultural value, associated more with health, sin, or even social class. Others point out that when everything smells, nothing smells. You just stop registering it. So here you are wrapped in cloak's wool and centuries of custom lying on a floor that occasionally emits suspicious noises, surrounded by people and poultry who smell just like you do. And somehow it's okay. It's not fresh, it's not fragrant, but it's home. A warm, if slightly pungent shelter against the bite of winter and the dangers that wait outside illness, hunger, wolves, taxation. The scent of cabbage and soot might not be lovely, but it means you have food. It means someone cooked. It means there was a fire. And when you lie back down, letting your body relax into the scratchy layers of wool linen, and whatever hay is still dry, the air becomes a kind of lullaby. A memory your body knows even if your mind is still catching up. And just as your eyes close again, the chicken near your head gives one last sleepy cluck, like she's reminding you that no matter the smell, you're safe. And warm enough. And tomorrow you'll all do it again. The fire has dimmed to little more than a soft red glow in the hearth, casting flickers of amber light across the rough floor. It crackles now and then, like it's whispering secrets to the sleeping room. You stir, not quite awake but aware of the cold, crawling slowly back into your bones now that the embers are dying. You sit up, pulling your cloak tighter. The air is colder than before, biting at your nose, tickling your fingertips. You cross the room on stiff legs to tend the fire. A few damp logs rest nearby, already frosted at the edges. You pick the driest and lay it gently across the coals, nudging them with a stick to coax a bit of flame. A single flame leaps up startled, then settles. You blow gently, careful not to smother it, and feel its warmth kiss your face. Your reward is a puff of eye-watering smoke that rolls into the room and hangs there like a lazy ghost. Everyone else stays asleep, or at least pretends to. The fire, such as it is the only source of real heat in this place. No chimney, just a hole in the roof and a prayer that the smoke will choose the upward path instead of meandering around your heads. Oddly enough, the smoke has its uses. Historians still puzzle over this was the smoky interior of medieval peasant homes, purely a design flaw. Or was it intentional? There's growing evidence that the smoke helped preserve the thatched roof, killing bugs, slowing rot and keeping the structure intact. It may have even kept respiratory infections at bay in some ironic twist of medieval logic. But still your lungs disagree. You cough softly, then shift a half-burned log to keep the warmth going just a little longer. Firewood is precious. You don't waste it on roaring flames. You ration it like soup on a lean week. Just enough to keep the worst cold from setting into your joints. The children are huddled near the hearth again, 2 of them sharing a single blanket like squabbling puppies. The baby is nestled under 3 layers of cloth and fur, her tiny breath visible in the air. Chickens roost nearby, fluffed up into round balls of defiance against the cold. One of them is actually standing on a sleeping cousin's legs. No one complains. The walls breathe with you. Not literally, of course, but the drafts have a life of their own. You feel a chill snake around your ankles and instinctively tuck your feet beneath the hem of your cloak. The house is a sieve. The cold always finds a way. You think of insulation, not the stuff in modern attics, but whatever could be found. Straw, moss, old rags, a sheep's wool if you were feeling decadent. Anything that could be stuffed into cracks and crannies. Of course, it didn't really seal anything, but it gave the illusion of control, and sometimes that's enough. There's a smell of singed hair. The goat must have wandered too close to the fire again. You turn to see her blinking at the hearth, like it betrayed her. A patch of her fur is slightly crispy. She doesn't care. You return to your corner, wrapping yourself in your cocoon of fabric and feathers. The warmth of the fire radiates toward you in lazy waves. It won't last long. Soon the cold will reclaim the room, but for now you close your eyes and bask in it. And here's where things get stranger. Some families deliberately filled their homes with smoke. Not just for the roof, not just for heat, but as a kind of protection. Against pests, against illness, even against spirits in some traditions. A smoky home was considered safer. Harder to invade, harder to curse. The line between practicality and superstition was paper thin. You breathe in again, deeply. The smoke doesn't bother you as much now. You've gotten used to the way it scratches the back of your throat. It's part of the night, like the creak of the beams or the whistle of the wind. You settle again, pulling your chicken blanket back into position. She grumbles but doesn't move. You both understand the agreement shared body heat knows sudden flapping. And in the dark, the fire pops again. You think about how this tiny flickering thing, this half-smothered flame, is the center of your world right now. It cooks your food. It keeps your fingers from turning blue. It makes you feel just briefly like you have a little control in a world that often gives you none. Tomorrow you'll have to find more wood, or beg it, or trade for it, or go without. But tonight you're warm enough. And as the fire flickers one last time and begins to fall asleep with the rest of the house, you drift along with it, smoke in your nose, chicken feathers in your elbow, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes a glowing pile of coals is all it takes to hold back the dark. You're awake again, but only just. Not from a sound, not from movement, from cold. It crept in sometime while you slept, sneaking past the wool and straw and shared warmth. It's not violent, just persistent. A quiet kind of cold that doesn't bite but seeps. It starts at your toes and works its way up like it has a schedule to keep. You wiggle your feet. The chicken near them shifts, makes a soft noise, and refuses to be helpful. She's warm, yes, but she's also a diva, and won't share more than she absolutely has to. You pull the blanket tighter. The air is damp now. Not wet exactly. Just heavy. As if it's been pressed through layers of damp wool and soot before reaching your lungs. Which, to be fair, it has. You sit up slowly and the cloak slips from your shoulders like it's giving up. Your breath fogs the air again. You glance toward the door, it's still shut, but not sealed. It never really is. Wind presses against it like an unwanted guest, and you can hear the frost beginning to form in the corners of the room. It makes no sound, but you know it's there. Like a thief. Like time. So now you do what every sensible medieval peasant does when the cold won't let go. You start layering. It's not glamorous, it's not efficient, but it is time-tested. First, the innermost layer, your linen shift. It's thin, a little itchy, and yes, you slept in it. Then your woolen tunic pulled over your head. In a motion you've done so many times your arms do it for you. Next comes the over-tunic, heavier, scratchier, maybe still slightly damp from yesterday's snow. You pause, consider your hooded cloak, and toss it over your shoulders like a knight preparing for a duel with frostbite. Your hands find a pair of mitts wool, loosely knit, more whole than glove, but better than bare. Your shoes stay off for now. The fire isn't warm enough yet to justify cold leather on colder toes. And still you're not warm, because wool helps. Yes, but warmth isn't just what you wear, it's who you share it with. You glance at the heap of sleeping bodies beside you and wonder if anyone would notice if you wedged yourself back in between the baby and the dog. The dog is warm. The baby's unpredictable. Historians still marvel at the inventiveness of medieval layering. People didn't have closets full of outfits. They had one or two garments, at best often hand-spun and patched beyond recognition. But what they lacked in variety, they made up for in technique. A good layerer could survive a blizzard with nothing but wool, linen, clever knots, and possibly a goat if things got really bad. You reach for your belt, a woven strip of cloth with a pouch tied to one side. It doesn't help with warmth, but it makes you feel more put together, like someone who might have eaten meat this week. Your reflection, if you had one, would look absurd. Wool over wool tunic, over shift hood over tunic, all of it wrinkled, patch-stained, and slightly singed. But when your world is measured in degrees, below freezing style is not the hill you choose to die on. You tug your sleeves down, stuff your hands inside the folds, and glance around again. The child in the corner is curled so tight she's practically folded in half. Her woolen cap has slid sideways, and her nose is red from cold. But she's asleep. deeply, dreaming probably of things warmer than this. A light clucking reminds you that the chickens have begun to stir. Early risers, insufferable optimists. They shuffle around fluffing their feathers, occasionally pecking at the dirt floor in the vague hope of breakfast. You resist the urge to ask them how they manage to stay warm. The trick, it seems, is stillness. You've noticed it over time. The more you move, the colder you feel. But if you lie perfectly still, if you let the layers trap your breath, your warmth, your hope, you start to feel it again. That pocket of heat. That soft hum of survival. And yet, even with layers, some parts of you remain cold no matter what. Your toes, your nose, your spirit, depending on the day. You rub your hands together, careful not to disturb the sleeping goat who has somehow made a pillow of your cloak. She blinks at you. You blink back. Neither of you is amused. Still, she's warm. You lie back down, layered like a woolly onion wedged between a snoring cousin and a cat who insists your ribs are her rightful bed. You let the heat return slowly. Bit by bit, breath by breath. The cold is still there, but it's on the other side now. Outside the cloak. Outside the circle of bodies. Outside you. And that in the end is enough. The night isn't quiet. Not in the way you might expect, at least. It's late or early, depending on how you measure such things when your clock is a rooster and your alarm is a cold toe. The fire has slumped into a barely glowing crust of embers, the kind that looks warm, but isn't. The air inside the cottage has gone still, heavy with sleep and soot. But the sounds, oh, they're still here. You lie there under your scratchy wool layers listening. First, the soft huff of the baby breathing beside her mother. The mother's snore is low and rhythmic, a sort of domestic thunder you've grown used to. Then a chicken clucks softly in her sleep, her claws twitching against the floor as if she's dreaming of grain. You didn't know birds could snore until you moved in with one. Now you're practically a scholar. Then there's the goat. She's chewing something, slowly, determinedly. You pray it's not your other mitten. A cough cracks through the stillness, deep and chesty from the old man by the fire. Everyone hears it, but no one moves. They all know that cough. It's been part of the house longer than some of the furniture. He'll survive. Probably. The floor creaks beneath someone turning in their sleep. The beam above you groans like it remembers the weight of too many winters. A distant wind taps at the shutter, trying to get in. You don't move. Not yet. Just listen. Because in a medieval household, nighttime isn't silent. It's communal. It's full of small declarations of life, every breath, every rustle, every sniffle, a reminder that you're not alone in the dark. And privacy. That's a future invention. Here, sleep is public. Everyone knows when someone's foot cramps, or if someone had beans for supper. There's a symphony of small, unintended disclosures. A child murmurs something unintelligible. A woman shifts and whispers a name, maybe a prayer, maybe a dream. You feel the warmth of someone's back pressed lightly against yours. You don't know who. It doesn't matter. Historians often point out how different our concept of sleep is today. We value silent solitude boundaries. But for the medieval peasant, sleep was survival together. You didn't sleep apart because you couldn't afford to. Not the space, not the heat, not the risk of loneliness creeping in like frost. Even the animals get in on the experience. The chickens settle around you like clock faces, their heads tucked, their feathers rustling now and then. They're oddly companionable, reliable. You begin to recognize individual quirks, the one who clucks in her sleep, the one who always ends up perched on someone's boots. They're part of the family. There's one particularly bold hen, Greta. Someone named her last spring who's taken to roosting on the edge of the bench. She does this thing where she stretches one wing dramatically before falling asleep like she's had a long day, managing everyone's affairs. You glance up. Yep, she's there. Half glare, half doze. Regal and slightly damp. Outside, the wind howls again, and a tree branch taps the roof like it's knocking politely. You wonder how people ever got proper rest with all this going on. But here's the truth: they did. Not in the tidy, dreamless stretches we chase today, but in waves. Intervals. A few hours here, a few hours there. A nap after supper. A rest after chores. A doze in church when the sermon runs long and the benches are warm. Sleep was flexible, social, shared. Even the idea of nighttime was softer. It wasn't 8 straight hours in a silent room. It was first sleep, then waking for a time maybe to stoke the fire, or relieve yourself in the frozen night air, or murmur a quiet thought to someone beside you. Then second sleep, which might carry you into morning. You think of that now as the rooster lets out a confused pre-dawn warble. He's early, or late, or wrong. Everyone groans audibly. One child mutters something that might be medieval for shut up. You smile into your blanket, and still no one moves. Because this hour, the thin hour before light, is sacred. The cold is real, the fire is nearly gone. But the house is full of warmth all the same. Warmth made from bodies and breath and the quiet music of shared rest. You close your eyes again, listening to the chorus of snores, clucks, coughs, and shifting straw. It's not noise, it's a lullaby, and in the space between a goat's sneeze and a chicken's sleepy sigh, you drift back under. Morning doesn't exactly arrive, it sort of creeps in. It begins with the faintest shift in the color of the room. You're not sure how long you've been asleep, but now through the cracks in the shutters and the edges of the door, the dark is turning a little less dark. Not bright. Never bright. Just enough gray to suggest that the sun somewhere far away and completely unconcerned with your comfort has started climbing back into the sky. Then a thud. Someone, probably the eldest son, is stomping the snow off his boots outside. How he got out without anyone noticing is a mystery best left to the morning fog. He swings the door open just enough to slip through, letting in a blast of frozen air that punches you right in the teeth. No one thanks him. You groan and sit up. The cloak that had kept you warm has migrated halfway across the floor, now tucked under the goat, who looks smug and deeply asleep. You don't have the heart to yank it back. Instead, you start your day the only way medieval peasants knew how, by shivering into motion. You rub your arms, your breath fogs again. Your toes have staged a rebellion against the idea of getting out of bed, but you nudge them into your stiff leather shoes anyway, hoping not to find anything that moved in during the night. Beside you, someone else stirs. Then another. The dog stretches and yawns in that theatrical way dogs do, while the chickens begin their morning clucks like factory whistles. You half expect Greta the hen to pull out a clipboard and begin issuing assignments. The hearth is cold now. Not dead exactly, but sulking. A few glowing coals hide beneath the ash, sulking like grumpy cats. You blow on them. They don't care. Rebuilding the fire becomes a group effort. One person gathers what's left of the firewood, 2 small logs, and something that might once have been a fence post. Another rummages through a bundle of dried twigs and straw. Sparks fly. Smoke rises. Someone coughs. The fire grumbles back to life. Then comes the real ritual of the morning breakfast, or something that can plausibly be called that. A pot is moved toward the fire still caked in soot from yesterday. Into it go water oats, maybe a few root vegetables that survived the frost, and the last slice of onion someone found behind a barrel. If you're lucky, there's a bit of bacon rind left. If not, you pretend. The smell is humble, earthy, honest. It seeps into your clothes before it reaches your stomach. You eat from wooden bowls, each worn smooth by decades of use. Spoons are passed around like prized possessions. One of them has a crack that pinches your lip if you're not careful. You remember this too late. The food is hot, which is all that matters. It doesn't have to taste good. It just has to thaw your insides. You eat quietly, the steam curling around your face as your fingers tingle back to life. Outside, the light continues its slow gray entrance. Snow has fallen again. A thin layer just enough to remind you that nothing you did yesterday helped, and you'll need to do it all over again today. You hear the creak of the yoke being lifted. Someone's preparing to fetch water from the stream. That someone isn't you, thank goodness. Not today. Instead, you're headed for the fields. Not that they're fields in any meaningful sense this time of year, just expanses of frozen mud dotted with stubble and the occasional lost boot. You sigh, pull your cloak tight, and step outside. The cold hits like a sermon. It doesn't matter how many times you've done this, your lungs still seize your ears, still burn your eyes, still water. The sky is flat and gray like wet wool. Your boots crunch through snow and frozen earth. Your hands are already going numb, and you haven't even picked up the shovel. And yet this is life. The rhythm of it. Sleep, wake, warm up, work. Again and again like the churning of a millstone. Historians often write about the drudgery of medieval peasant life. And they're not wrong. But what they sometimes forget is that inside the drudgery there's resilience. Ritual. Even meaning. Because as much as you might dread stepping into the cold, there's also a strange comfort in knowing exactly what your day will bring. The animals need feeding. The field needs tending. The fire needs wood. The children need watching. And tonight, chicken's willing, you'll pile back into the sleeping heap and do it all again. As you walk to the edge of the plot shovel slung over your shoulder and breath clouding the air in front of you, you glance back at the house. It's squat and crooked, a bit smoky, slightly tilting to the left, but it's there. Still holding strong, still warm in its own stubborn way. Inside, someone's feeding Greta a crust of bread. She's earned it. She kept your feet warm. Sort of. And as you jab your shovel into the frozen earth, you wonder briefly what the future might say about all this. About these lives this cold these mornings. Will they understand the work? The simplicity? The smell? Maybe not. But you do. The air outside doesn't warm up. Not really. It just shifts from knife in the lungs to metal spoon on bare skin. The sun, now a pale blur above the tree line, doesn't so much rise as hover tentative, like it's not entirely convinced this part of the world deserves its full attention today. You're ankle-deep in snow-packed soil, chipping away at what used to be a garden bed. You're not planting anything, not now. It's winter. Everything that grows is asleep. You're just digging to break the frost to keep the ground from turning to stone. And while your hands ache and your nose has gone suspiciously numb, you find comfort in the routine. Behind you, someone's splitting firewood. The sound of the axe thok-thok-thok is rhythmic, almost meditative. Every time the log cracks apart, you feel a bit warmer inside. Not because the wood is yours necessarily, but because someone will be warm tonight. A neighbor trudges by her basket filled with kindling and turnips that look like they've seen better centuries. She nods to you. You nod back. Words aren't needed, and the cold conversation is a luxury. Breath is heat. By noon, though, that word feels optimistic. You return to the house for a break. Inside, the temperature has risen a degree or two, thanks to the revived fire and all the bodies moving around. It smells like sweat smoke and soup. A combination you never would have tolerated in your old life, but which now feels strangely inviting. The pot in the hearth is bubbling gently again. Someone's thrown in barley. Maybe a bone. Maybe not. The soup is thin but hot. It fogs your face, coats your ribs, and fills your belly like a silent thank you. The children are playing with a wooden wheel outside their hands, red with cold, their laughter cutting through the stillness like a warm knife. You envy them. Not their fingers, which look moments away from frostbite, but their joy. Their ability to see this world as something to explore, not just survive. You sit down by the fire. The chickens have claimed the best warm spot again. Greta naturally has taken center stage. She looks at you like she runs the entire household. She might. You sip your soup slowly. And this is the thing people often forget. Comfort doesn't have to be big. It's not a roaring fire or a feast or a soft bed. It's a bowl of soup you didn't have to stir. It's a pair of socks someone darned just for you. It's a chicken who tolerates your cold feet without protest. That's wealth here. Historians write about medieval diet with a kind of detached curiosity. Barley root vegetables, legumes, occasional bits of salted pork or smoked fish if you were lucky or clever. They debate how much meat peasants really had, how often fasting days were followed, whether beer was safer than water it usually was. But what they don't always capture is how food was shared. You don't eat alone here. Ever. A crust is passed down the line. A ladle of soup is divvied out evenly, even if someone's bowl is bigger. If there's a treat, say a bit of lard melted on bread, it's split without question. You sit beside the hearth and take it all in. The warmth, the noise, the smell of burned onion. Someone's feet too close to the fire. A child whining because she got the small spoon today. It's chaotic, but in that chaos there's care. After lunch there's more work. There's always more work. But first, a moment of stillness. You lean against the wall, eyes half closed. Fingers wrapped around your empty bowl. The fire crackles. The baby gurgles. Greta hops down from her perch and pecks your shoelace. You smile. You're tired. Cold. Possibly developing a mild case of trench foot. But for this moment in this room filled with smoke and life and faintly judgmental poultry, you're okay. Because medieval life was not easy. It was never easy. But in the middle of long winter's cracked hands and relentless gray skies, people still found ways to make it bearable. Together. You exhale slowly. Let the heat of the fire sink into your bones. Let the sound of someone telling a story badly float over you. Let the chicken climb back into your lap like it's her birthright. And for now, just be. When you finally stand again, your legs creak like the old ladder outside. Everything does in this weather door's knees smiles. The world moves slower when it's frozen. You brush crumbs from your tunic tug on your cloak and step back outside. The cold hits your cheeks, instantly making your eyes water. It's not surprising. What is surprising is how quickly your body accepts it again. Resignation is an underrated skill. The fields are still quiet. There's no planting today, no harvest. But the animals need tending, the paths need clearing, and the snow on the roof needs knocking loose before it decides to cave in. You grab a wooden rake and start scraping snow from the thatch, sending little avalanches tumbling to the ground. Below, the dog chases them as if they're invaders. You let him. Everyone's got their job. From the path, you see your neighbor's tiny hunched figures against a field of white. One's pulling a sled full of firewood. Another's carrying a sack of potatoes so carefully you'd think it was gold. No one rushes. Rushing means sweat, and sweat means cold later. You keep working. It's not glamorous. You're not crafting poetry or defending a castle or inventing anything except new ways to say ow when the cold bites your fingers. But the work is honest, and it's necessary. You check the chicken coop. The hens are annoyed as usual. Greta pecks your hand when you reach for the eggs. You thank her sarcastically. She narrows her beady little eyes and fluffs her feathers like a monarch denied her throne. You leave her alone. The goat needs fresh straw. She needs everything, really. Attention, praise. Dramatic sighs when her water's too cold. You oblige with exactly the amount of affection she deserves, which is slightly less than none, but more than you'd admit. By afternoon, the sun is a white blur hanging low in the sky like a lantern you forgot to trim. The shadows grow long and the light has that blue tint. Winter brings beautiful in a slightly threatening way. It looks colder than it feels, which is saying something. You duck back inside just as the wind picks up again, flinging tiny shards of ice against the walls like nature's version of gossip. Inside, the fire is alive again, thanks to someone's effort and a miracle involving birch bark. You pull off your cloak, your mitts, your boots, and sit. Not because you're done, but because you must. Because the body can only be cold for so long before it stops asking politely. You rub your hands together, feeling the sting as your fingers thaw. Your cheeks tingle. You're aware of every inch of skin, every muscle, every ache. It's strange how the cold makes you more present. Supper is simple. Again, a chunk of rye bread, a sliver of cheese so dry it qualifies as a building material, a bowl of broth with floating bits that might be leek or onion or possibly optimism. Still, you eat it all, slowly, gratefully. Then, as the last of the light fades from the room and the chickens settle down again, one of them already perched on your sleeping mat, you do the only logical thing left. You go to sleep. Not because you want to, not because it's especially comfortable, but because darkness has returned. The cold is creeping in again. And the best defense is body heat and layers. So many layers. You wrap yourself in wool and settle back into your patch of straw. There's less shuffling now. Everyone knows where they sleep. The pile forms naturally. The baby tucked between two warm bodies. The old man by the fire. The goat refusing to lie anywhere except the middle of the floor. The chickens arranging themselves like little feathery stones in a circle. And you, somewhere in that tangle. Not alone, not cold. Not warm exactly, but better than outside. This is what work feels like here. Not the kind that gets medals or songs, but the kind that keeps the fire burning the children, full the roof standing. Historians often skip this part. They write about taxes, kings, famines, laws, but this right here is the real story. Getting through the day, keeping fingers warm, sharing bread, being pecked by chickens, laughing once, maybe twice, falling asleep with your knees still sore and your heart still full. You close your eyes, and even as the wind rattles the shutters and the night presses its icy face against the walls, you rest, because you earned it. You wake again this time not from cold but from bells, not the dramatic kind, just a distant muffled clang metal on metal wrapped in snow. It takes you a moment to place it. Ah, the church bell. It's not marking time with any precision. It's not telling you when to wake or eat or kneel. It's just reminding you it exists. that time still moves even when your fingers don't. You roll over slowly, your back cracks in two places. Congratulations, you're officially part of the medieval morning club. The fire has burned low again. You knew it would. Even with someone taking turns tending it, there's only so much wood and so much willpower at 3 or more a.m. But there's still a little warmth left clinging to the hearth like a sleepy cat. Someone maybe you will have to rekindle it soon, but not yet. Instead, you take a moment to just be. Lying there surrounded by the gentle snores of people and animals you've come to love, in spite of their noises, their smells, and their truly questionable blanket etiquette. The baby snorts in her sleep. The dog sighs dramatically. A chicken shifts her weight on your leg. You could move her, but she's warm and frankly seems to be using you as her mattress. Mutual benefit, really. Then there's the matter of your fingers. They ache. It's not new. You've grown used to it. In winter, your hands are never not aching. It's like a background hum, an old song your bones remember. You sit up, flex your fingers slowly, and press them near the coals. The heat returns one molecule at a time, each fingertip prickling back to life. You wince, breathe, wait. That's the trick, you wait. Because in winter, nothing is instant. Not warmth, not hunger, not the dawn. You look around the room. Someone's already up. The old woman by the fire, she's always the first. Maybe she never actually sleeps. Maybe she just waits for the rest of you to stop talking. She's stirring something in a pot. It smells like boiled grain and wisdom. She glances over and nods. You nod back. That's enough conversation for now. You move to help. The floor is cold beneath your feet, the packed earth hard and slightly uneven. You nearly trip over a chicken who looks personally offended. You apologize. She doesn't accept. As you feed the fire, you reflect on the work that lies ahead. It's never ending, but it's also never quite the same. Some days are field days, some are mending days, some like today are slogging days. You're going to the river, because even in the middle of winter, water doesn't fetch itself. The stream still runs just barely. Covered in ice but not frozen through. You'll have to crack it open again, chisel through the top ladle out what you can carry it back in wooden buckets that slosh freezing water onto your boots. It's unpleasant, but necessary. So you layer up again. Shift tunic, outer tunic, cloak mitts. Your boots feel heavier today, or maybe you're just tired. Probably both. You step outside into air that greets you with a slap. Your nose goes numb, your breath turns to steam, your joints creak like a poorly built wagon. But the snow glitters. That part never gets old. It sparkles in the faint morning light, each flake a tiny miracle that doesn't care how many chores you have. The trees are white statues. The path is pure and quiet until your boots ruin it. You walk to the river slowly, deliberately. Every step has purpose. There's no hurrying on snow like this unless you enjoy falling flat on your dignity. The river greets you like an old, cold friend. You crouch, break through the ice, and begin your work. Scoop, pour, scoop, pour. Your breath clouds the air. Your mitts soak through, your nose drips. It's fine. Because back at the cottage, the soup needs water. The people need tea. The chickens, for some reason, need their daily dish of slightly warm water. Or they get dramatic. Especially Greta. You finish your task. Turn back. The buckets are heavy. The path is longer on the way home. Your shoulders ache. But the cottage waits crooked, smoky, stubborn, and that's enough motivation. Inside, the hearth glows brighter. Someone has added kindling. The room is warmer. Barely, but noticeably. You place the buckets by the door, shake out your mitts, and peel off your outer cloak. The goat tries to chew it. You give her a look. She gives you a bleat. It's an understanding. Then breakfast. Same as always, grain, maybe an egg if Greta's feeling generous. It tastes better than it should. And as you sit beside the fire watching the light crawl across the floor and the frost melt from your sleeves, you realize this is the rhythm. Work, warmth, work again, and in between small mercies. Like the soup. Like the fire. Like the chicken on your lap who pretends she's not attached but refuses to leave your side. And like the bell still faint, still far reminding you that even in the coldest winter's time, and life continue. Later that day, after your third trip outside, after your second set of wet mittens, and after someone spilled the soup and blamed it on the dog, it happens. The great debate. It starts as all important things do with a draft. A cold one slithering in near the base of the wall. It weaves through ankles, up cloaks, and into the bones. Someone mutters about it. Someone else groans. Then, like a spark in dry hay, the house erupts into whispered theories and pointed fingers. It's coming from the east wall, says one voice. No, it's the chimney again, insists another. Maybe the thatch is sinking, says a third who mostly just likes drama. You sit on your stool and observe. Every winter this happens, the cold becomes personal. It's not just weather, it's sabotage. It's something to be solved, blamed, defeated. You join in because of course you do. You point to a crack near the door. It's always that you say. We stuff it with moss every year, and every year it finds a new way in. The old man scoffs. Used to be dung, he says, eyes twinkling. Worked better, smelled worse. And thus begins the great insulation argument. You might think medieval folks accepted their cold fate with stoic silence. You'd be wrong. They had opinions. And more importantly, they had methods ranging from clever to questionable. Some swore by tightly packed straw in the wall crevices. Others preferred bundles of rags. In colder regions, peat was popular, especially when dried into bricks and used like a plug. And yes, animal dung was often used not just as fuel, but as a surprisingly effective wall filler. It dried hard, resisted wind and well. The nose adjusts. You remember one winter when someone tried to line the walls with old cabbages. It didn't work. It really didn't work. But the mice were thrilled. Historians still debate which of these methods were most effective. Some suggest that layered insulation moss dung cloth was reserved for the poorest homes, while wealthier peasants used wood or stone reinforcement. But the line between wealthy and not freezing was thin. You used what you had. And what you had usually was whatever could be stolen from the woods without being noticed or begged from neighbors or scraped off the floor. Eventually someone stands and declares they're going to fix it once and for all. They disappear out the door with a hammer, a basket of straw, and a slightly overconfident stride. 15 minutes later, they return with a frozen nose and a new hole in their trousers. The draft still exists. Another person tries a spiritual tactic, sprinkling ashes in the corner and muttering something about restless house spirits. You nod politely. No one stops them. Sometimes hope is the warmest blanket of all. Meanwhile, you take a more realistic approach, moving away from the draft. You drag your stool across the room closer to the hearth, carefully avoiding the chicken cluster and the goat who seems to be in the middle of a personal crisis, involving an overturned bucket. You wrap your cloak tighter. Sit down again and try not to think about how you're going to sleep tonight with that same icy breath creeping along the floorboards. Because this is the truth of winter in a medieval home. Comfort isn't permanent. It's constantly negotiated, fought for, lost, regained. The fire gives then takes. The wind shifts. The straw settles. The warmth you had at noon is gone by nightfall. But you adapt. You learn where the warm spots are, which chair holds heat longest, which blanket to grab first, which chicken is most cooperative when you need a little extra insulation around the knees. And you learn to laugh about it. Because what else can you do? When the door creaks open again and someone shuffles in with a proud grin and a wad of dried moss tied to a stick, you applaud. You must applaud. Innovation deserves recognition. They jam it into the crack by the window. Everyone waits. You hold your breath. The draft softens slightly. Cheers erupt. There's even a dance. The goat joins. It's chaos. But for a moment the house is warmer, not because the moss worked necessarily, but because everyone's laughing. And laughter in this weather is revolutionary. You settle back into your spot. Grin, fading into something softer. Outside, the snow begins to fall again, quiet and persistent. The house groans, the fire hisses, and inside you feel a little braver. Because even if the cold always comes back, even if the moss dries out or the wind finds a new crack, you'll meet it together. With straw, and blankets, and slightly suspicious goats, and very opinionated chickens. By the time night falls again, the wind has changed. You can feel it sharper, hungrier, curling under the door and whispering through the thatch like it's looking for something. Maybe you. The stew tonight is thinner than usual. Just a few lentils, a pinch of barley, and the ghost of a turnip. It tastes mostly of salt and smoke, which at this point might as well be the flavor of the season. Still, it's warm, and warm is worth more than taste. You eat slowly, seated near the hearth, watching as everyone else finds their own corners of comfort. The old woman dozes with her hand still wrapped around her bowl. The children poke at the coals with sticks, imagining dragons or demons or something equally charred. Even Greta seems subdued tonight, tucked into a shallow nest of straw she made by herself. Feathers, puffed eyes, half closed. And then someone says it, I think it's too cold for the chickens. There's a moment of silence. A moment when the fire pops and no one moves. Then someone else nods, then another. You all look at the hens, small, fragile creatures not built for hard frost. Sure, they have feathers, but feathers only go so far when the temperature outside is plotting your downfall. So you make the decision, bring them in closer. Not just into the house they already live there, but into the sleep pile. Yes, that sleep pile. The one made of people blankets, cloaks, and dreams of spring. You gently scoop up the first hen. She protests, of course, but settles quickly once she feels the warmth of your chest. Her heart beats fast. She's scared. Or annoyed. Hard to say with chickens. The others follow one by one, gathered like sleepy children from their roost and tucked gently into the folds of blankets' arms, or in one case a woolen cap, hastily repurposed into a nest. Even Greta accepts her fate with only minor complaints, shuffling down beside your leg and tucking her beak beneath her wing like a seasoned traveler. Now the room is full of people, of animals, of warmth, of breath. Every inch is occupied by someone or something trying to survive the cold together. And the air, though thick with the scent of smoke and feathers, is full of something else two-piece. Because there's a point where the cold simply wins. Not by freezing you, but by pushing you together. By forcing you to admit that walls and fire aren't always enough. And that survival sometimes looks like 5 people and 7 animals in a tangled heap of cloaks and hay snoring in harmony. Historians debate how common this level of closeness was. Some say it was rare, reserved only for the harshest climates. Others argue it was seasonal, only on the worst nights in the dead of winter when even the fires grew tired. But in folk tales and oral histories and grandmother whispers passed down from hearth to hearth, these moments live on. Moments when humans stopped pretending to be above the animals they kept and instead huddled with them. Moments when dignity bowed to practicality and pride made room for a goat's rear end. You shift to make space. The fire's low again. You could get up and feed it, but now there are chickens on your lap, and a child on your shoulder, and a cat kneading the small of your back like she's baking you into bread. So you stay put. You feel the rise and fall of sleeping bodies around you. You hear the soft rustling of feathers, the gentle cluck of a dream, the occasional fart from the dog who has never once apologized for anything in his life. The house creaks as the wind tests its strength again, but this time you barely notice. You are covered in warmth that doesn't come from wood or wool, but from the sheer accumulation of life around you. A small, determined pile of persistence. You wonder if people in future centuries will understand this. That warmth can come from proximity. That comfort isn't always comfortable. That sometimes the best defense against the world is to become a pile of breathing things and wait it out. You smile into the dark. Outside the snow falls harder. Inside no one moves. And even the cold, fierce and endless as it seems, knows when it's lost. You don't know what time it is, but it doesn't matter. Time inside a medieval winter cottage isn't measured in hours. It's measured in how many times the fire has gone out, how many times someone stirred in the pile, how often the goat has decided that the middle of the room is once again hers alone. And right now, by all those metrics, it's sometime deep into the night. Or very early morning, or both. You're not asleep, not fully awake either. Just drifting in that soft space where your body rests and your mind wanders. Around you, there's the warmth of others. Cloaks, straw, feathers, breath, and silence. Not the absolute silence of empty places, but the rich, velvety quiet of a room full of life that's simply paused. The chickens are still, even Greta. The baby has gone quiet too, her little mouth slack in sleep. Someone is snoring again, but softly now, like they've run out of argument with their own lungs. You listen, to the room, to your own breath, to the crackling of a single ember still holding on in the hearth. And you feel still, rooted, like a tree under snow. The cold is still there. You can sense it pressing against the door, nosing at the shutters curled up in the corners of the ceiling. But inside this woven mass of bodies and cloaks and half-stolen blankets, it's a distant thing. A thing you've pushed away for now with warmth made from shared breath and stubborn hearts. You think of the week ahead. More snow, probably. More firewood to haul. Maybe someone will trade a sack of grain for eggs. Maybe Greta will lay one and demand applause. Maybe the roof will finally lose its patience and drop a thatch clump on the soup pot again. Maybe not. None of it matters right now. Because right now you're here, wrapped in wool, surrounded by warmth, listening to the deep ancient hum of people and animals, just resting, just being, just surviving in the quietest, most persistent way. And as your eyes slip shut again, the wind makes one last soft pass around the house as if checking. And when it finds the shutters closed and the room full, it moves on. There's nothing for it here. Nothing to claim. The cold will come back tomorrow. It always does. The draft will return. The firewood will dwindle. But so will you. You'll rise. You'll wrap. You'll walk out into the snow with your boots full of holes and your heart full of quiet. Because winter isn't just something to endure. It's something to outlast. And you chicken-warmed, soup-fed, smoke-scented, you are still here. Still breathing. Still enough. And now, as the fire in our little cottage dims to a faint flickering glow, let's slow everything down just a little more. You're lying there on a bed that isn't really a bed beneath a roof that groans when the wind gets clever, beside a chicken who's stolen your corner of the blanket, and a goat who's finally stopped chewing things that don't belong to her. You're tired in the best way. Heavy-limbed, soft-eyed, full of a kind of peace you didn't know you'd been looking for. Outside, the snow keeps falling. Quietly, steadily, not with drama, but with persistence. Like it knows it has all night to finish its work. And you don't have to do anything right now. No firewood to haul, no bread to bake, no water to carry, not yet. Right now, all you have to do is rest. The wind rattles a shutter, but you don't move. Someone sighs beside you deep in sleep. The coals whisper their last warmth into the room. You pull your cloak tighter. The feathered edge of a hen's wing brushes your elbow, and you sink. Not into sleep like a sudden drop, but like a slow drift downstream. Wrapped in wool and warmth and the quiet companionship of creatures who've accepted you as one of their own. The cold will come back, so will the work. But right now in this moment, you're warm, you're safe, and the world can wait. End of script. Sweet dreams.